Hello, hello, everybody. Pop culture curator here, and we're back for another Wednesday, which means the Gilligan's Island stream. We've got two more fresh episodes ready to cover here, and I've got my excellent fellow panelists here, Gorilla's Random Thoughts. Gorilla, how are you doing there?
I'm doing.
I'm doing okay. I wanted to first say hello to everybody in the chat. It looks like we already have people here. Captain Infinity, Scogly, and Mad Scientist. So good to see you all. I'm so sorry I'm running late. I had a little bit of background stuff I need to deal with to get the stream ready. So I'm probably not going to be able to. I'm not. I apologize for the second week in a row. I probably not going to be able to read from the book Inside Gilligan's Island by Sherwood Schwartz because we're already 20 minutes late now. And I know Gorilla's Random Thoughts is 2 hours ahead of me, so for him it's like going on 9:30 at night. So we'll get through these. Enter time ahoy! In fact, let me cover. Let me show the. I want to make sure. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I usually try to cover all the chats, and I usually try to shout out everybody. If I don't mention you, please let me know. If I don't, it's not intentional. Captain Infinity says cheers. Scogly says cheers. Mad Scientist says hi there. Hello, Mad Scientist. I'm so glad you're here. Scogly says yeah, me too, Gorilla. And Edge of Time says ahoy. So tonight we are going to be covering episodes 29 and 30 of the first season of Gilligan's Island. We're getting close to the end. Episode 29, the first one we're going to cover is Three to Get Ready, and it aired on April 17th, 1965. And let me get my player ready here if I've got that right. Bear with me here. Patience, patience. All right. So, Gorilla, are you all ready to start? Did you have anything you wanted to say before we begin?
Well, this first episode here, I finally got what I've been waiting for the last 29 episodes.
And what's that?
Gilligan gets an ass whooping from the skipper.
I guess he does, huh?
Yeah.
What's funny is I watched this the first episode that we're covering tonight. The first three to get ready here. I watched it. I think it was about 2 days ago, and then I was going to watch the second episode last night, but my horror stream went on once again so long that by the time the horror stream was over, it was just too late. So I was barely able to watch this second episode just before this stream tonight. That's one of the reasons why I'm running so late. But we'll be covering that when we get there. Did you enjoy the episode though?
Yeah.
All right. Well, cool.
Yeah.
All right. So let me get my video up and ready. I'm gonna get it queued. And everybody in the chat. Oh, that's what I forgot. I got to, like I said, I'm running a little late. I'm gonna drop a link in the chat if anyone would like to join us. I realize that I forgot to put a poll up once again, but I'm gonna go ahead and put a link. And I encourage anybody to come on and join us in talking about this episode if you'd like. Everybody's welcome. All right, let me pin that message to the top. There we go. All right. So for our first episode, let me share my screen here. By the way, if I'm coughing, I'm going to try to not manipulate, but I'm going to try to mute my mic. I have a roommate that's cooking that tends to burn their food a lot, and when they do, there's a lot of smoke in the house, and it makes me cough. I try not to, but I'm only human, but I'll try not to. So here we go with our first episode. We have our opening credits here with the cast and our introduction. And here we go with our opening scene. And it looks like the professor has a trap at the lagoon. And they're
Well, I
digging
thought
a
they were
hole.
building some. Weren't they building the tower in this one, or is that the next one?
That's the second one.
Oh, okay.
Right. This is one where the professor, in fact, he will explain in just a couple seconds here what exactly they're doing. So let me make sure I get my subtitles up and working. Sometimes I tend to forget them. There we go. Okay. Gilligan, I think that's deep enough, says the skipper. Not an elephant. So Skipper tells Gilligan to stop digging because Gilligan's keep digging too much. But what the professor tells is what they're doing is they're building a bait trap, is what the professor says. And that's the reason why it's next to the lagoon. I'm guessing it's designed to catch smaller fish and sea creatures like that they can use for bait to catch larger stuff. Here we are where Skipper takes the shovel away from Gilligan, and Gilligan keeps digging. And he says, "Will you stop that now? Get out of there so we can get the files in there." So I apologize if my some of the text might be off on the subtitles. And Gilligan finds this in the sand inside the hole. Hey, Skipper, look at this shiny stone.
I think it was amusing that he was starting to act like Rich Baron there with the eyepiece there or
I
the
know, right? Kind of like Mr.
oh
Howell. Like, right, like, never mind that. Get out of here, out of there, Gilligan, says Skipper. There it is. It'd go much faster, Gilligan, if you just help, says the Skipper. And then the Skipper in a Gilligan in a bad Cockney accent says, "Sorry, old being, not my line of work." I think he means bean, Bean, not Being. That's where I wish I'd had more time. I need to go in and correct the subtitles on some of these. And the professor asks, "What's that, Gilligan?" And Gilligan says, "I have a shooting marble." I don't know why Gilligan would say that when it's flat. But anyway, and here's where Skipper notices, and I said, "I didn't know there were any of these on the island." And then Skipper gets all excited and says he found it. Yes, in the sand. And according to
yeah,
Skipper, what he found is a semi-precious. Oh, the professor says it's just a semi-precious piece of quartz. Did you have something to say, Gorilla?
yeah. Well, I think I forgot what I was gonna say.
That's
Never
okay. I
mind. I
do it all the
forgot what.
time. Okay. So the professor says it's just a semi-precious piece of quartz known as a cat's eye. And Skipper says, "No, Professor. What he found is the eye of the idol, Mertrazar." And then Skipper says to Gilligan, "Anybody who finds this between now and sundown, Gilligan at the cat's eye, worth about $11, says the professor. And Skipper says, "No, it's worth millions, Gilligan. It's been lost for centuries." But he tells Gilligan he gets three wishes, and the finder gets anything that he wishes for. And Professor says, "No, it's not. I've seen a little around these islands for years." And of course, the skipper counteracts with the finder gets his wishes. He gets $11, says the professor. I'm sorry, the subtitles doesn't say who's talking, so I'm trying to explain who's saying what.
Yeah, and welcome Herc 130. Welcome.
Hello, Herc 130. So good to see you. There we go. Hey, PCC. I'm glad you're here, Herc. So Gilligan, of course, is not really sure, so he grasps the jewel in his hand and says, "If so, I wish for a gallon of ice cream." As the professor and Skipper continue to argue. And Gilligan immediately notices, "Hey, what's that?" And that's when Gilligan walks to the edge of the lagoon and sees this bucket. And he opens it and he says it's chocolate.
Yeah. Did they ever explain where that ice cream came from?
Well, that's what the professor said. The professor said that it either fell out of a plane or off of a boat. But of course,
Okay.
I know with common sense, then we would think, well, yeah, if that was true, it would probably melt. But I'm guessing that they're assuming that if it fell out of a plane or a boat, that it probably just happened before it had a chance to melt.
Yeah. Yeah, really not necessarily too, because the ocean waters might have kept it cool enough to prevent it from melting.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. The water might be cold enough because I mean we've all heard the story of Titanic. That water was so bad that they couldn't even breathe. It was so cold.
Yeah, but that was also North Atlantic in April.
That's what I was thinking, right? And this is the Pacific, which is supposedly a little warmer. But who knows? We've never been on that island, right? So here we are later on that night, and they're all enjoying the ice cream, and they're still debating where the ice cream came from. Came from, and the professor says, "I repeat, silly superstitions concocted by ignorant savages." I think he means concocted. Professor, I notice it hasn't stopped you says the skipper, for which I'm thankful to the plane or liner which lost it. This is where Professor says that. So the professor says he thinks it's from an ocean liner or a plane. And Gilligan's just trying to agree with both of them pretty much. And that's Gilligan saying that's possible, Skipper. And Skipper says, trust me, little buddy, you have 2 wishes left. Please don't waste them. And Professor says, don't waste your time. And Gilligan says, don't worry, I won't. Sorry, and once again, I've said it before, but I can't read all the subtitles. I don't want to get stricken, so I highly recommend you to watch this on your own time
Yeah.
if you get the chance.
And Herc says suspension of disbelief, just flow with the story and the ice cream.
That's right. It is fantasy and it is a comedy.
Yeah. But
I
it's
only
just
have
still
to.
nice but still kind of fun to analyze some of the stuff and have some fun analyzing it.
It is, and what's funny is the plot of this episode that we're watching and the one we cover after this is a common plot and trope that went through a lot of the 1960s TV series. So it was almost like a lot of those series at the time were just copying each other's plots. So many episodes of many series at the time had where somebody thought they had 3 wishes. I mean, I remember even the Brady Bunch did it. So here's where Gilligan said, I only have to. And then the professor gets frustrated and said, oh, what's the use? And walks away. And he says, superstition, silly superstition. And Mr. Howell says, superstition or not, it's a treat I shall long remember. And Ginger says, I wish I had 3 wishes. I wish we were home in Hollywood. And then Mrs. Howell says, in Palm Beach. And of course,
How
the
far
skipper
is
says,
Palm Beach from Hollywood?
Palm Beach, I think, is in Florida, isn't it?
Oh, is it? I
If it
thought it
is,
was
it's up
California.
Palm Beach. Mhm. That's a good question. I can look it up really quick. I should have known that. I feel dumb. I've got my brains are scrambled so much
Yeah.
that I should remember that.
Because that's
I know
in
it's a big call.
Howell's in.
Go ahead. Florida.
I was gonna say that. Oh, it is Florida. Okay. I was gonna say then the Howells and Ginger weren't too far away. That's thinking it was like L.A. along the beach.
Yeah, it's definitely Florida, and there's a fancy golf course there. It's a common place for rich people to go. And especially it makes sense Mrs. Howell saying that because Mr. Howell plays golf. So I guess that kind of lines up. So here we have Skipper telling Gilligan, remember now, Gilligan, the 3rd wish is to get us rescued. Now, about the 2nd wish, maybe something we could all enjoy. So Gilligan starts, unfortunately, I guess let me not get ahead of ourselves. So Mr. Howell says, where I live, that neighborhood is, and I missed a joke. I was afraid that was going to happen. So the skipper says, about the 2nd wish, maybe something we could all enjoy. Well, I think it's of $1,000,000 a piece. Skipper suggests, like I said, I'm having to skip through seconds. So we're not getting all the jokes. But Skipper says maybe buying some land for each person or maybe give each person $1,000,000 a piece. And then that's when Mr. Howell walks up and says, where I live, that neighborhood is considered a slum area. Mr. Howell, after all, $1,000,000 is hardly petty cash, says Skipper. It is to me, says Mr. Howell. Okay, I won't wish for money, says Gilligan. And Mr. Howell says, how can the boy concentrate? Everyone's cluttering his mind. And Gilligan keeps thinking that he wants to buy a motorcycle. So he keeps talking about over and over about wanting a motorcycle. So that's why they say, will you stop mentioning the word motorcycle? And Gilligan continues saying with a sidecar and a siren. And Skipper says, Gilligan, if I hear motor, blam, 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 says Gilligan. And making the sound of a motorcycle. And there's where Gilligan runs around acting like he's on a motorcycle. And Mr. Howell says, heavens to Keenan Wynn. And Keenan Wynn's an actor that was around back then. And he was like in the episode of Twilight Zone and many other things. Here we have Marianne and the professor working on making linen, apparently. If we use this to weave material, will it shrink, says Marianne. Well, not a bit, says Professor. He beats the stick against the tree, and he says it'll have the strength and consistency of linen. So what they're doing here is they're taking those plants that that are in their hands, they're beating them against the tree and they're tearing them apart and they're shredding the fibers. So what they're telling us is they're going to weave the fibers together and make clothing. So I think they're trying to explain is how they're able to get clothing on the island. Because remember, they've established they have a sewing machine,
Yeah. But it still
and
doesn't explain how they always have the same clothes though. But
the
go on.
same clothes, or how do they dye them red and blue and right, and without patterns. 'Cause usually when you, I remember when I was a kid, my mother used to make homemade clothing, and she used to sew, and she used patterns that you would buy. So Gilligan is walking along and daydreaming about all the different things that he could do for his next wish. So he says a stereo outfit for the tweeter and two woofers. By the way, this is the '60s. This is when stereo was new and people were really excited. Before this, it was mono with one speaker. So he says a genuine picture of good Gibson. And a soda fountain with all the flavors, including sassafras, of course, like a child. And Marianne says, there goes Gilligan. And the professor says, yes, going, going, gone. And he's just being Gilligan. And here we have the professor tried to act nonchalant, whittling some wood in the hut. And here comes Gilligan. And Skipper says, why, Gilligan, imagine bumping into you here. Of course, acting surprised. And Skipper suggests to Gilligan, why don't he whittle a while? And it's that second wish that Gilligan says that he can't really, he's confused, he doesn't know what to wish for. And what I'm saying is when things are at their darkest, says the skipper, when you're in trouble and need help, who do you go to? So this will be officially the second time the skipper is trying to tell Gilligan to treat him like it's his father. He did that before in a prior episode. So he asks Gilligan, who do you usually go when you have problems? And Gilligan says to my mother. And Skipper says, well, your mother is not here. And Gilligan says, neither is my father. So, of course, Skipper says, well, pretend that I'm your father. Now you've a problem. We'll sit down together and solve it, says Skipper. You think it'll work? Of course it will. Okay, Skipper, let's try, says Gilligan. So Gilligan steps out of the door, turns around, and comes back in. And he says, hi, Dad, and hi, son. Here they are playing dad and son. And my what, says Skipper. And Gilligan says, my dad wears a mustache. And Skipper says, all right, go out and try again. So Gilligan heads out the door while Skipper tears a couple pieces off a broom and holds them up to his nose. And he says, hi, son. And Gilligan says, what's on your mind? He says, what's on your mind? Gilligan says, what's on your lip? And Skipper says, never mind. Now, what's on your mind, son? And of course, Gilligan says, where are your glasses? And Skipper says, your father wore glasses too? And Gilligan says, as long as I can remember. All right, go out and we'll try again, says the skipper. So Gilligan heads back out the door. And while he does, Skipper grabs a pair of glasses. And here, now they're going to try again. Son, how many times have I told you when you're talking to somebody, look them right in the eye? Obviously, because Gilligan's looking down. I apologize. I need to silence my phone. I always start to get these texts when I'm having my streams. I apologize. There we go. I muted my phone. When you're talking to somebody, look them right in the eye, says Professor Skipper. Gilligan says, Skipper, my dad was real short. I used to look down at him. Well, how's this, says the skipper, and he sits down. And then Gilligan finally says, Dad, how'd you get on this island? And of course, Skipper says, I've been waiting for you, son. Where have you been? And of course, that didn't work out so well. And Gilligan runs. I wish I could have caught the joke, but of course, it was in between the slides. Oh, that's right. Gilligan says, where's mother? And that's when the skipper gets frustrated and just chases him out the door, as you can see there.
I'm starting to think he did that. He did that on purpose to skip her just to pull at his
I know
strings
it's
there.
almost like it, right? Yeah, nitpicking him to death. And here we are back to Gilligan trying to decide what he wants to do with his next wish. So, like a child, a red tricycle? No, it's a blue tricycle. No, white tricycle? No. And then, of course, here comes Ginger saying, "Hi, Gilligan." And she says, "I think you better wish for a pair of glasses." And of course, now here she is trying to manipulate him again. I don't like using that word, but Ginger's using her ginger charm on him. I'll put it that way. Of course, you can't take if you're tensed and nervous, she says. You have to relax. Come with me. I'll relax. It'll relax you, she says. So there she is. For some reason, they suddenly have a hammock out between two trees. So she tells him to get in the hammock. And then now she tells him, you just have to cooperate, just unwind. Let everything go there. And she starts giving him a massage. Now, just imagine that your body is just floating along, he says. Every part of you feels calm. And he falls asleep. And she says, Gilligan, not that relaxed. And she wakes him up. And he says, I'm sorry, so where was I? She says, you were
Uh,
about to wish that you were going to be a movie star, she said. And he says, I was? And she says, why not? And he says, yeah, why not? Sure. Did you have something to say, Gorilla?
oh, I was just gonna read the chat here after you're done talking.
Go for it.
All
Put
right,
it up on
Herc's
screen if you
sending
can.
some. Yeah, Herc 130 sending love to Marianne there, and hail there, Admiral Teague there. His hand pink waving, and then
Hello,
Admiral
Admiral
Teague
Teague.
says, "Thanks for the wrench."
You are welcome, Admiral Teague. Thank you, you guys. I appreciate that. And I hate to be an old fuddy duddy, but I have to mention who these people are because, I mean, honestly, a lot of people listening these days aren't going to know. So Ginger says to Gilligan, just wish you were Burt Lancaster, Laurence Olivier, which those were two fantastic, very famous actors back in the day. And unfortunately, they're both now passed on. Richard Burton and Cary Grant. And Cary Grant is spelled with a Cary, but I need to go in and fix the text. All rolled into one. And of course, he says, you know what? I'd be all rolled like that. You'd be the most sought after movie star, she says. I would. And you know what? She says. You'd have your choice of leading ladies to pick from. And of course, she says, and who would you pick? You know who? And he says, I know, but you tell me anyway, she says. And I can't remember the name she says.
I can't remember it either.
I think I know who. And if it is, it's very interesting. Plus, right, Lassie the dog. And of course, Ginger doesn't know that. And she's, oh, Gilligan, you're terrible. And she turns to the hammock and dumps him on the ground. That's right. By the way, that I have to mention that reminds me the wonderful, fantastic Raquel Welch passed away today, and that's horrible. She was a beautiful woman, a big actress back in the day, and it's really sad to see her go. I think she was like 82. So there's Gilligan laying on the ground, still trying to decide what he's going to dream about or wish for. And along comes Mr. Howell. What are you doing down there? And he says, thinking of the second wish. Mr. Howell says, this is no place to think. Come up on your feet. Of course, Gilligan says you already tried that. And there's only one. Okay, now this is something that I can't correct the text because this is actually what Mr. Howell says, but it's incorrect as we know. So Mr. Howell says there's only one method to concentrate, and that's yogi. When we all know the term is yoga. So the only yogi I know of is Yogi Bear, the cartoon, or Yogi Berra, which I believe was a baseball player, but it might be just a part of the humor, part of the joke. And there it is. In fact, Gilligan says, what, you want me to be a baseball player? And Mr. Howell says, don't you understand the land of the Swamis? I think it is a joke. I think what they're showing, what they're implying, is that Mr. Howell doesn't really know what yoga is. So I think that's why he's mistakenly saying yogi, because he doesn't really know what it is. He's just he let's just say he's got something up his sleeve. So he tells
Yeah.
Gilligan, "Don't you understand? The land of the Swamis. You've got to practice yogi."
Yeah, and
And now, go ahead.
I was gonna say, Herc says ginger
Can you
equals
put it on the
meh,
screen for me?
meh. Yeah, ginger equals meh. And then Admiral
Sorry
TK
about
says
that.
hail to Herc 130, and Herc 130 says Raquel was a mega bae for decades.
Yeah, she was. It was a many. She was a movie star and an idol for many, many guys growing up. And here's where Mr. Howell says, "I'm not arguing." And then Gilligan says, "I can't stand on my head." And he, "Come on up, come on, over you go." So Mr. Howell is forcing Gilligan to stand on his head. And he says, "I bet the ideas are rushing into your head, aren't they?" As soon as Gilligan stands on his head, the jewel slips out of his pocket and falls to the ground. And Mr. Howell notices that. And Gilligan said, "It's not working. All I'm thinking is not falling." And Mr. Howell says, "I'll shake you a little to make." That's right. The jewel has not fallen out yet. So Mr. Howell says, "I'll shake you a little to make sure the blood gets to the head." And there he shakes, and he says, "Oh, comfy." Let's see if I can catch the jewel falling. Well, I guess we didn't, but there it is on the ground. "Mr. Howell, you sure I'm going to find the answer this way?" says Gilligan. And of course, Mr. Howell has the jewel in his hand and says, "You'd be amazed what I can find." And Mr. Howell immediately leaves Gilligan and back to Mrs. Howell. And he says, "Lovey, my dear, make room." And she says, "What for?" And he says, "The money." And she says, "We haven't got much with us. Only a few 100,000, she says. And he says, we'll take home more money." And he says, "He has the eye of the idol. How darling of Gilligan to give it to us," she says. And he says that boy is generous to a ball. That's why I need to
So,
go in and fix. I promise everybody, I'm gonna go in and start fixing these subtitles because sometimes when they get the words wrong, it totally confuses me because I can't remember verbatim exactly what they said in the episode.
I think I think they're trying to say that he's generous to a fault.
Yeah, I think so too. It's like and by the way, these subtitles are the ones that came with the Blu-ray version of Gilligan's Island, and they're generated by somebody sitting behind a computer typing them in, who apparently is either not paying attention or is drinking too much. But either way, definitely they're not doing their job. I've spent so many times over the years going into movies and TV shows, having to go in and edit the text on the subtitles, and it's ridiculous. So anyway, back to Gilligan's Island. So right, Mr. Howell says that boy is generous to a fault. "He's so unselfish," says Mrs. Howell. "I think for a friend he'd turn us inside out." "And upside down too, my dear," says Mr. Howell. And he tells her, "Lovey, make a little wish." And she says, "Oh, the holidays with the Prince and the Greys would be divine. Better than that, I'll buy that little country. Come with me, we'll make a giant wish. Take the flower," he says. And he says, "I wish for $20 billion in the giant economy-sized package." Hoping, obviously, that something will fall up from the sky. And he's frustrated, nothing happens. And then she says, "Perhaps they've had to send for it from the Federal Reserve Bank." He says, "Darling, if Gilligan's going to wish us off the island by evening, we won't have time to wait. Cancel that order for 20 billion. Make it 10 billion," he says. And still, he's frustrated. 5 billion, nothing happens. 100,000, nothing happens, of course. 9 and a quarter, and nothing happens. 80 stamps, and nothing happens. "Maybe they can't find the money. We'll lend it to them," she said. A lot of good that'll do. And then Mr.
Does
Howell,
he even have 20 billion?
billion, definitely not. I think at this point they're millionaires. I don't know if they've never established yet if they're billionaires.
Okay, yeah, I knew they were millionaires, but I was gonna say they can't do that.
Back in the 60s, there were very, very few billionaires. Unfortunately, now there's many, many billionaires, and there's also that's why we have so many more poor people now doing worse than ever.
Well, inflation will do that.
Yeah, inflation, blowing that low wages, and the economy and inflation, yeah, or all of it, yeah. Anyway, Mr. Howell comes to realization that he's not getting his wishes, so he says, "I've been duped. I've been taken by that pink-cheeked bumpkin." Yes, we were so nice to him, says Mrs. Howell. That's the last time. Believe me, I'll never pull anything sneaky on him again, says Mr. Howell. And he tells her to put the flower back. And obviously, as we all know, Gilligan isn't doing anything underhanded because Gilligan doesn't even know that Mr. Howell took the jewel. And there's Gilligan still standing on his head by the tree, and here comes along the skipper. And the skipper says hello, not realizing what's going on, and then he does a double take. And of course, he gives us the eye. Gilligan, are you going to get out of that? Are you going to get out of that is a headache? Oh, Gilligan, all you're going to get out of it is a headache. I apologize. And Gilligan says, oh, I'm way past that, skipper, as he stands up. And here comes Mr. Howell. Bah humbug on your magic powers and your deeds as he tosses the jewel to the ground. And Gilligan picks it up. You took the eye, says the skipper. Mr. Howell, you just don't understand, says the skipper. Gilligan found it, and it only works. Only he can make it work. And then Mr. Howell says, that was mumbo jumbo. There's nothing to it. It was easily explained by the professor. I should have remembered before I tried it, he said. And of course, Skipper says, oh, certainly, with the full moon over your left shoulder. With Mars in conjunction with the North Star, says Mr. Howell, and with the hind leg of a horned toad in your pocket. No, Mr. Howell, I stood and said, that's exactly right. It isn't even raining vanilla, strawberry, or tutti frutti, says Mr. Howell. I know this is jumbled on what I'm saying because this skips seconds on these slides, and I don't want to ruin these jokes, so please, I encourage you to watch this show on your own so you can get these jokes. And Skipper says, Gilligan, do you realize what you've done? And Skipper says, your second wish. And Gilligan says, vanilla ice cream. And then Mr. Howell says, might as well make it French vanilla. Gilligan, look what you just look. And then I'm going to pick up my dog. And they hear from off screen, Gilligan, look what just came floating in the lagoon again. Here comes Mary Ann with another bucket. And Gilligan opens it up and tastes it. And it's vanilla, rich and full body. God, it works. Now, are you satisfied, Skipper? You know what tastes great with this? Caramel sauce, says Gilligan. But Skipper immediately hushes him up because he did before he could wish for caramel sauce. And he doesn't want to waste his last wish. He reminds him it'll be your third one. And Gilligan says, but I was only going to wish. And then he shuts him up again. And then he says, meet us in the hut area. Come on, Gilligan. We head off to the huts. Here they are gathered together with all their luggage packed and ready to go. And just how is this miracle to take place, says the skipper, says the professor. Planning to leave by magic carpet? And Mr. Howell says, well, I must say the ice cream gave the legend added weight. Only the legend, darling. I'll get back to the health club, says Mrs. Howell. And Mr. Howell says 3 times around the track. Sauna, bath, I'll be my usual self. And then the professor says, Mr. Howell, in some time you'll be back in your usual hut. And Mary Ann says, I wish you would come with us, Professor. And touche, Skipper. Here, there's Gilligan. And here comes Gilligan. Well, if it isn't Merlin the magician. No, it isn't, Professor. It's me, Gilligan. And they ask Gilligan, what does he have? And he says, souvenirs. He got these nifty rocks and a swell ashtray and some swell eggs. Look at how the circles go around. You go round and round. Gilligan, very interesting, they say. But when you gonna get us off the island, says the skipper. And Gilligan reaches in his pocket for the jewel. and then realizes he has a hole in his pocket and he's lost it. What you thinking, Gilligan? Says Skipper. That's not what they said. What you thinking, Gilligan? They wouldn't say that. So once again, the text is way off on this episode. The idol, you couldn't have lost it, did you? Says Ginger. Oh yes, I did, says Gilligan. When did you see it last? He says I could have lost it in the cage where I got these rocks, by the tree I got these eggs, or maybe in the hut. And Mr. House says, well, certainly that narrows down the possibilities. So here's where they decide they better go look. That's impossible, Skipper. I'm too big to fit inside my plate. The joke doesn't make sense. I apologize because we missed the frames. So anyway, they
All right,
break up. Okay, they break up into two or three different search parties. So the Howls go to where there's a pile of clams, and they're going to search through the clams to see if they can find the jewel there. And he says, "Darling, you have to look through the oysters, clams, it's all the same to me." And she says, "Oh, to think that we've stooped to manual labor." And he says, "On the contrary, we are the ones wealthy enough to do this. After all, they are called Oyster Rockefeller," he says. And she says, "Oh, darling, you're so witty." And here we have now Skipper and Marianne looking where Gilligan found the eggs. And Marianne looks up and notices the nest in the tree. And she said, "There's a tree with a nest, Skipper." And Skipper sighs and then realizes that he needs to get up there. And Marianne continues searching. And Skipper says, "That does it, Marianne. We've covered every inch, but we can't give up now." "Hey, maybe it's lodged in the tree," she says. "That nest is quite a ways up." So here we are with Gilligan crawling around looking for it. Eye of the idol, eye of the idol. And unfortunately, he crawls under this hut and hits, or under the table and hits the chair with his head. And that's just a rock. And here we are back with the Howls going through all these oysters. "Oh, look, everybody, a pearl," she says. And of course, Mr. Howell immediately has, I think it's called a lope or something like that for a jewel. Where he pulls it out, he can immediately look at the jewel. There you go. These are last year's. It's flawless, Lovey. Oh, the old Howl luck. It's certainly carrying on. You notice he's got a little bag there around his neck that he's been collecting these with. Now we have another cave that we haven't seen before. It's a smaller one this time.
yeah. Oh,
And
the joke was the they love a pearl, and he goes, "Oh, good, these were last year's pearls, the ones she had on."
oh, that's right. That's right. A joke. I guess the joke is poking at like last year's fashion. So here's the professor says, "I refuse." And she says, "You're just being stubborn. The professor does not want to crawl inside that hole." "Well, I'm being as sensible." "All right, I'll do it," says Ginger. And Ginger starts to get on the ground to crawl through the hole. And Professor says, "Ginger, you are hardly dressed for spelunking." And of course, she doesn't know what that means. And she says, "Professor, what did you say?" And he says, "Spelunking. A spelunker is a person whose hobbies speleology. In other words, poking around in caves, which I have done. And I spelunked in many caves, and it's very, very fun."
Were those guided caves or on
No,
your own?
on our own. I don't like the guided. I did do one guided cave, didn't like it. So most of the ones we did were the unguided caves. It's much more fun, much more thrilling. So if it'll make you happy, he says, and then he agrees he'll do it. What possible difference could my attitude make? Because she says basically with that attitude you'll never find it. And then she says all the difference in the world. And he says, "Ginger, all I'm doing is looking for $11 worth of quartz." And she says, "Well, to get into the mood, you've got to think mole." "You got to think what?" She says, "Mole, like this." And she says, "Now you try it." And he says, "Okay, all right." And there's the professor humoring her. And she says, definitely not mole. Looks more like a gopher to me. And she said, my eye. She said, it's your eyes. He said, my eyes. She said, yeah, you're not sad enough. Moles have sad eyes. He says, oh, so there's his impression of a mole. What are you doing now? She says. And he says, I'm making sure a hawk doesn't swoop down and carry me off. Everything's going to be all
Oh,
right. Just think moles, she says. Oh, okay. Just think mole, he says. Just think mole. Just think. So there's the professor, and he climbs into the hole. And now we have Skipper up on the branch, climbing to the nest to check to see if the jewel might be in there. And Mary asks, oh, he's almost there. Yeah, says Gilligan. Well, easy does it, Skipper. And there's Skipper almost reaching the branch. No, why, Gilligan? He says, because after Gilligan says he didn't climb the branch. And he says, you want to know why? And Skipper says, no, why? He says, that's a weak branch. You see, birds are real smart. They don't build their nests on weak branches. And as he
well,
says that, the skipper falls.
that's
With
actually not necessarily true because a lot of the birds around here they'll build them on the weaker branches that way avoids the squirrels and stuff.
Yeah, you're right about that. I don't think the bird's gonna know how strong the branch is, though. And then there's a difference between
Yeah,
the weight of a bird and a nest than there is a human being, I guess. And of course, we get our view of the yellow of Skipper being exasperated on the
but
ground. And here we come
now
with Mister. Sorry,
this
what's
part
that?
here made me laugh real hard with Mister Howell.
And here he is with another bucket of oysters. Boy, they have a lot of oysters on that island. Lovely, I've come to a definite decision, he says. We're definitely going to sell our house in Oyster Bay. And here we are. The professor comes out of the hole, and Ginger says, well, any luck? And he says, not yet. And he has a bump on his head, and she asks him what happened. He says, I bumped it on the wall. Cave is dark inside. And she says, oh, well, forget about thinking, Mole. Think bat. And he says, think bat. Think bat, think bat. Yeah. So he goes back into the cave to look some more. And here we have Gilligan with the banana. And he peels it. And he looks inside for the mole. The Not the mole, but the jewel. Sorry about that. And of course, we have once again our exasperated look by the professor. Gilligan, not even you could lose a jewel inside a banana. Now give me that. And Skipper grabs the banana and squishes it in his hand. This isn't the time for an afternoon snack, says Marianne. We have to find the eye of the idol. It's almost sundown. How about the waterfall? Nope. After the oyster bed? Last Saturday, remember, Skipper was kind of hot, so I thought I'd go on the waterfall to take a shower. And then suddenly they hear, I found it from the ginger. That's Ginger, come on. And here we go. So there we are. Oh, hey, what's wrong with you? Says Gilligan. And the professor says, I'm a bat. You look more like a gopher with the earache, says Gilligan. Never mind that, of course, the skipper says. All right, so they're all excited. They've got the jewel. It's time for Gilligan to make his third wish to get them off the island, hopefully. It's the other eye, Skipper. It's the other eye. Gilligan, you not only got a hole in your head, there's a hole in your pocket. Put it in the other pocket. So he does. And here we cut back to the Oyster Hill. Mr. and Mrs. Howell, says Gilligan. And he's calling for Mr. and Mrs. Howell, and there's no answer. And then he hears a voice from inside. And he hears, I'm here. Oh, there you are, Gilligan, my boy. Here comes Mr. Howell with another bucket. And he buries it right where Mrs. Howell's hand was trying to get some air. And he looked and he said, "Yeah, Ginger found it. See, it could have been. It's impossible. This is July. There isn't an R in the month." "Well, she's in there. Heavens, the Fulton's fish market," says Mr. Howell. He hadn't realized he buried her. "Lovey, Lovey, where are you?"
Yeah, I laughed so hard at this.
"Thousand pardons, my dear. Poor Lovey."
Now I got a question: were they sitting there shucking oysters, or were they searching through a pile, or what was?
It looked like she was opening them, but I didn't see any tools in her hand. So maybe just searching through the pile.
Yeah. Oh, so were they going through the trap that they're building earlier, getting all the oysters out of there, see if the oyster swallows
No,
them?
no, no, no. The trap earlier was for bait. Remember, for which means small
Yeah.
fish. I think what she was doing is just going sorting through the oysters, and I think the pearl she just found in an oyster that was already opened. Because obviously you have to have a knife or something to shuck the oysters. So here they are back at the lagoon, and Gilligan reaches into his pocket, and of course Skipper's impatient. "Come on, Gilligan. Oh yeah." "No, Gilligan, don't say it. Don't say you've lost it again." And he says, "Okay, I won't say it." "Gilligan, how could you?" "Easy." Put it in the other pocket, and it fell. I guess Gilligan, both of his pockets had holes in them. And then they're trying to think about where he saw it last. He says, "Well, he had it when he was with the Howells. It'll be between here and the oyster bed," says the skipper. "We're never going to find that little jewel in all this sand. Sure, we will take off your shoes. Walk in a straight line," they say. "Somebody will step on it. Here, hold these here. Skipper, take your shoes off. You have big feet."
Yeah. And hey there, Captain Finity. Welcome.
"Hail, Captain Finity. Good to see you there. Thank you for joining us." And Professor says, "Little buddy, Gilligan, look." So the jewel was inside Gilligan's shoe. Here we go. "So you found it real fast. Now put your hand out. Now start wishing," says Skipper. And Marianne says, "I'm not going." And Mr. Howell says, "After I reserve first class passage for 7 people." "Excuse me, you can't stay alone with him." Mrs. Howell says, "It's not proper. Just telling he's a chaperone." So what's happening is that they don't want to leave the professor. The professor, I hate this because it skips these a lot of the jokes, but the professor says that he's not going. He's staying right here because he doesn't believe them. And then Marianne says, "Well, we can't leave him by himself. I'll stay with him." And then Mrs. Howell says, "That's not right, those two alone. Maybe they need a chaperone." And then Mr. Howell says, "Darling, they're going to miss you at the horse show." "Oh, you love me." So Mr. Howell decides to stay with them. "You're not going anywhere," says the professor. "We were until you started to be a party pooper," said Mr. Howell. And then, of course, Mrs. Howell says, "Well, I'm not going. Just go. I'm going to stay with my Thurston." "Well, that's the old pioneer's stud, my dear." "No, it's not the stud. I can't remember what word they used, but he would not call her that."
Pioneer Spirit.
Yeah, I think it was Pioneer Spirit or something like that. But I'm serious. The texts are really, really off on this episode. I feel sorry for people that are hard of hearing or have hearing problems and turn these subtitles on thinking that this is the jokes of the show because they're going to be very confused. "Please, now the sun is going down. Make your wish," says this. "Get up here, Romeo." My dog, I apologize. "Please, now the sun is going down. Make your wish." "I can't, Skipper," says Gilligan. "I can't leave the professor and Marianne and the Howells here." "Count me out, too. Hollywood would have to do without me," says Ginger. And then finally the professor gives in and says, all right, I'll give in, but on one condition." And Skipper says, "Anything, Professor, anything, just name it." He says, "If I tried, will you forget about all this nonsense?" And they agree. So come on, everybody, get together, everybody. So they huddle together and they say, "All right, Gilligan." And Gilligan gets ready to make his wish. And Gilligan, with his final wish, says, "I wish we were off this island." And as he does that, this is what happens.
Well, technically, he got his wish.
Right, that's exactly what happened. Literally got his wish.
Yeah. I
And when he
got.
obviously we all know, and even when I was a kid watching this, I was like, "Oh no, you should have said, I wish we were rescued."
Yeah. Well, this is why you always be careful what you wish for.
Right, always be careful what you wish for. Right. So unfortunately, they're just floating out in the middle of the lagoon, which isn't doing them much good. And Skipper says, "You got us off the island into the lagoon." And this is where Gilligan says, "I should have said Hawaii. I wish you had," says Ginger. And Skipper says, "Wish we were in Hawaii. Not now, Gilligan. Wish we were in Los Angeles. I wish we were in Chicago." And of
And,
course,
yeah, there. And he gets it.
there's your favorite episode, your favorite scene, right?
Yep.
That's what you've been waiting for 29 episodes to do. So here we have later on that evening as we're sitting around the dinner table. And Mr. Howell talking as the wealthiest man in the town, Gilligan, I would, oh, just forget it, will you? They're still talking about what they would have had if they had wishes, or what they would have wished for. And they say, just forget it, will you? A land, and now Gilligan saying, I wish I'd have floated some land and floated. Here's where they talk about how the land floated us into the lagoon. And they say, you have no faith, Professor, not in fantasy or wishes. And Gilligan says, everybody's mad at me, huh? Not mad exactly. We just felt that you let us down into the lagoons, says Mr. Howell, as a matter of fact. Of course not. You did what the skipper told you, says Marianne. He told you to wish us off the island, and you did, she said. I didn't say into the lagoon, says Skipper. And Mrs. Howell says, you know, Gilligan, I've never did think that semi-precious stones did a thing for you. And here's where Gilligan has the eye, and he throws it. And Skipper said, but a waste of energy, you already had 3 wishes. And Gilligan said, well, I just hope whoever finds it has better luck with it than I. And when Skipper hears that, hey, that's right. Whoever finds it next gets 3 wishes. And of course, as he says it, I love it. Well, come on. And they all head to look for the jewel. Even the professor gets up. See you later, Gilligan. And he says, Professor, I thought you don't believe in that stuff, he says to the professor. And the professor says, oh, I don't. It's completely unscientific, absolutely absurd, violates every rule of common sense, and is completely contrary to the rules. But just in case. And he runs off. And now they're all searching for the jewel as Gilligan does this.
No. no, no, I got a question there. So
Yes.
say he best throws it and loses it, then comes across it, say like a year later. Would those 3 wishes reset?
You mean if the same person found it or a different person found it?
Same person found it.
I don't know. I don't know what the rules are based on the plot. Well, see the thing, and obviously the thing is that it wasn't a magic jewel. That's what the professor was explaining, that it was all luck. But then of course even the professor was willing to bend logic there at the very end.
Yeah. Now I do got one question here. Say they were gonna remake Gilligan's Island, like complete, like do a complete like reboot and everything, remake it and reboot it here. Would you watch it if they made this into uh where it's more of a drama instead of a comedy? So that's
Well,
what
I
the
could
main
answer.
element, but have a drama.
Well, I could answer the question with just the first words out of your mouth. You said if they remade. My answer is no. Yeah, I don't care if it's a drama, a comedy, or what. No, I would not be. It's like Back to the Future. I don't want a remake of this show. Is anything and everything they make would violate it and ruin it, and it would take apart the characters, and it would be dystopian. They would be swearing. Every other word would be a cuss word.
Well,
There
say
would
for
be
example,
sex all over the island. What's
Well, see
that?
if you had good writers in that. Just made it more of like a drama where they're actually stuck instead of making it a comedy.
Well, yeah, but well, before if Hollywood wasn't like they are now with their agenda, I would say maybe a drama, possibly. But with the agenda, the way they're making stuff, I would say absolutely not. And I don't think I'll, at least you're younger than I am. Maybe you'll see Hollywood return to normal and start making good stuff again. But I doubt that I'll see it in my lifetime. So I would say no. And if they ever do remake this, I hope they wait till after I'm long gone. Because Tina Louise is the only surviving character, Ginger, and maybe they're waiting for her to die. I don't know, but I'm hoping that Sherwood Schwartz, the producer, is obviously long dead. His son, though, is still alive, and his son is pretty much running the estate. And I'm hoping that he made his son promise that he doesn't do a Rod Roddenberry. I'll put it that way. And what they did to Star Trek. Let's just hope they didn't. They don't do that with Gilligan's Island because that would be a disaster. And besides, Gilligan's Island is still, even to this day, being shown in reruns all over the world and in syndication. So it's still raking in the money. They don't need to remake it. They're still making money off of it. And here we are, our ending credits in the Tropic Island Nest. Okay. I wish we could play the music. And here we have our end. Here on Gilligan's Isle. Okay, so that was episode 29. All right, so now we are going to get into the next one. Do I need to get caught up on any chat here?
Nope, I had it pretty much. Oh, I said Captain Infinity greetings and all that stuff.
Herc says, salute, Captain Finity. Captain Finity says, hail, Herc 130 panel and chat. Admiral T says, hail at Captain Finity. All right, so there we go. Thank you. Thank you, Gorilla, for helping me keep up with the chat. I really do appreciate that.
Yep.
So next up is we have the episode Forget Me Not. And I want to preface this by saying that this episode absolutely, positively would not air these days. It is everything the woke crowd hates. So
yeah,
I want.
Skipper will bet me too. He will bet me too to oblivion.
Well, it's not just a skipper, but it's the way they depict the castaways in here, which I don't want to give away too much until we watch the episode. But as you guys, for those of you in the chat, and if you're watching this on a rerun, I appreciate it. But you'll notice the more we use this episode, you'll start realizing like, oh yeah, this is another problem with Hollywood, because back then people could do this, and we all knew it was joke. It was no harm. Nobody meant any harm against anybody. But now you have too many people try to oversensitize themselves and find faults in everything and get triggered on everything. So, but this is our next episode, Forget Me Not, and it aired April 24th, 1965. And let me get that queued up here. And we have our opening credits. Don't want to show too much because we don't want to get our good old copyright strike. And there you can see, if you look over towards the right, I don't know if you can see my cursor or not, but over to the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see that the flag is at half-mast. We mentioned this before. This was shot the day after John F. Kennedy was assassinated. So all flags were ordered at half-mast. And the weather started getting rough. And here they ended up on the island with our cast and crew. And we have our opening shot here. By the way, I was just reading up more on Gilligan's Island and the history of the lagoon. Apparently, the set of the lagoon that they built lasted all the way into the 90s. It wasn't until the 90s they paved it over and turned it into an employee parking lot. So knowing that, I wish I would have went and looked at the set, because I was at the time visiting LA and going to see famous shooting locations and things like that, but I didn't know where it was at or where it was located. It's a tragedy, but oh well. I'm surprised that they kept it from the 60s all the way to the 90s, which means that every time we see the lagoon in the Gilligan's Island movies that are filmed many years later, it's actually the same lagoon. So here we are, written by Herbert Margolis, produced and directed by Jack Arnold, of course. And we have Skipper and Gilligan building a lookout tower. Oop, I now need my subtitles, duh. Don't want to forget subtitles. Let me get that going here. There we go. And Gilligan says, Skipper, you sure well finish the signal platform before the Navy ships go by. And then Skipper assures him the Navy will hold their maneuvers day after tomorrow. Exactly. We'll build a signal fire. They'll come and rescue us. Oh, yeah, says Gilligan. So they're all excited and they're happy. Yes, sir. Aye, aye. Thank you. So Skipper goes about working on the platform. And he tells Gilligan to gather some vines. And here we are, have Gilligan pulling on vines here. And unfortunately, he pulls on the vine, which is holding this piece of bamboo, which falls and hits Skipper on the head. And Skipper then falls out of the platform. And Gilligan's still not quite realizing what's going on. And he says to the skipper, you're supposed to be there working. No napping. Wake up. Come on, Skipper. Must have fainted from exhaustion, he thinks. Skipper, I hate to do this, but somebody ought to finish our work. And by the way, the text is wrong again. He did not say somebody ought to finish our work. He said we need to finish our work, is what he said. So he gathers together some water in his hat and dumps it on Skipper and wakes him up. And by the way, here, this trope that we're about to see, just like the last episode, this is what I referenced to. This was another common trope in a lot of TV shows at the time. And you'll see what I mean here. So here we are, the skipper coming to his senses. And he says, what happened? I'm soaking wet. And Gilligan says, it was a flash storm. It's all over now. And Skipper says, oh, thanks. Wait a minute. Who are you? What? And who am I? Who are you? Skipper, you are the skipper, Skipper. He says, Skipper who? Skipper, do you feel all right? I mean, are you okay? And he says, will you stop calling me Skipper? And he says, where am I? Where are you? If you don't know where you are, I'm not going to second guess you. I better go get the professor. He's very good. Who's who? And now we have cut to a later scene. And Skipper here is running up to get the professor for help. Something really terrible has happened to the skipper, he says. I was binding picks so we could finish signals. I think he meant I was picking vines so we could finish signals. And here comes the skipper, and he says, see, Skipper, you're just in time. And Professor says, I think something's wrong with Gilligan. It's me. Don't you remember your little buddy? Says Gilligan. I don't have any buddy. Why is he wet? Says the professor. And Gilligan says, I threw water on him. This happened when he took his nap. And Professor Skipper, you and I ought to have a little talk. And Skipper says, who are you? And Professor says, something wrong with you? Oh, I feel fine, says Skipper. Professor says, well, you are the skipper. Don't you remember the minnow and how we got lost at sea and shipwrecked on this island? Doesn't any of this ring a bell? Not even a tinkle, says the skipper. Perhaps you'd better sit down, says the professor. He says, I don't need to sit down. He says, all right, then stand up. And he says, well, thank you. And then he sits down anyway. And this is where the professor realizes that there's something serious. So he says, Gilligan? And Gilligan says, yeah. He says, and he says, it looks like he has amnesia. And Gilligan says, and whatcha? He says, amnesia. That's when people can't remember anything at all. It's happened to the skipper. He keeps rubbing his head. You have hit him with something. He says, not on purpose. He says, well, no, it's an accident. And then Gilligan said, I remember pulling the vine. A pole fell, and then he napped. And then Professor surmises that that's what must have happened. Oh, well, will he ever remember to stop forgetting, says Gilligan. The skipper says, or Professor says, it's too early to tell you You better take him back to his hut. Jeez, it's all my fault, says Gilligan, feeling bad. I'll never forgive myself unless I lose my memory, says Gilligan. And he says to Skipper, would you mind coming with me, sir? So here we are, he's taking Skipper back to the hut. Right this way, he tells him. And he says, you can rest here for a while. He says, I used to share this with a buddy. And Skipper says, what happened to him? And Gilligan says, you won't believe me. And he says, I don't believe you. See, I told you, he said. And Skipper notices whoever lived here was a real slob because he said that it was very dusty on that cabinet. And he says all these socks and clothing hanging around. Maybe you know better. And he's laughing about the holes in the socks. And he says, whoever these are sure had big feet. He should have kept them in his big shoes. What's this pile of junk doing on the floor, says the skipper. He has his vital possessions in there, says Gilligan. What's this a picture of? So we have Skipper here going through his own personal belongings, but he doesn't remember them. He says, looks like a back of a mule. And here's his favorite hat. It's just about your size, says Gilligan. Here, try it on. Look, here, look. Look in there, see, says Gilligan. See, does it remind you of anything? It reminds me I need a haircut, says Skipper.
Yeah. I wonder why he never wears that other one.
Well, I think I could be wrong, but I think it's because it's a dress hat that you wear with a dress uniform, and if you're in the Navy, it goes with a white uniform. And I'm guessing that the reason why he's wearing this hat here is because it's more like a casual Navy dress. Like, for example, if you're in the military, you have your officers, a formal dress. When you're doing formal functions, it has your ribbons and all the, name badge, all this, the fancy stuff that you've seen. And then for an informal, people walk around in like fatigues or camouflage. So I'm guessing that's what the hat is. I'm guessing the black one is more for casual. To the skipper, he lost his memory. So Gilligan is explaining to Marianne that Skipper's lost his memory. And she says, oh, he did? Oh, my gosh, I better tell the professor. And Gilligan, the horse, says, no, wait, I already told the professor, Marianne. But it's too late. She's already gone. And here we have Ginger comes up. And Skipper says, well, hi, beautiful, because obviously he doesn't recognize her. And he says, hey, honey, what's your name? And she says, oh, I don't care. What my name is now. And he starts kissing her on the neck. I'm fine, and may I say you are a bit of all right yourself, says the skipper. And of course, Ginger is not accepting this because it's not right. I don't know what I used to be like, but I like what I'm right now, says Skipper. Oh, I know what it is, she says. It's about time, he says. Wait a minute, I mean, after all, you're a leader, she says. Well, I don't know what type I am, but you're my type, he says. And he tries to grab her, and Professor comes to the rescue. Skipper, Skipper. And she asks what's going on, and the Professor explains, well, he's got amnesia. He can't remember a thing. I wouldn't say that. There are a few things he hasn't forgotten, she says. And he runs after her, and she escapes, and of course Skipper does this and runs into the clothesline. And we have the howls. We have to hurry. The Navy's here, and I want to be the first to be piped aboard. They're already thinking that they're going to be rescued because of that lookout tower. It'll be so exciting to set foot on water again, she's saying. And here comes Skipper with the professor coming through the kitchen door once again. I don't know why, not the front door, but oh well. Skipper, I'd like you to meet Mr. and Mrs. I'm wondering if, now that I think, because this is the second episode where we've seen them come through the kitchen door and not the front door. And I'm guessing, is it because they're out of respect for the Howells? They don't go through the front door, they go through the back like servants? Maybe? I don't know. I may be reading too much into it. Or they're just not using the front door because we would recognize that it's the same front door that it's Skipper and Gilligan's hut. Who knows? Anyway, Skipper, I'd like you to meet Mr. and Mrs. Howell, says the professor. And Mr. Howell says, "My, aren't we formal today?" And beg your pardon, would you say your name was? Says Skipper. Mrs. Howell, this is no game. Skipper's lost his memory, says the professor. And she says, I wonder if he could have left it here. You think we packed it in the steamer trunk? She says. She's not quite understanding what's going on. And Mr. Howells explained to her Lovey he's lost his memory. He doesn't know who he is. And she says, don't be silly. He's the captain. And he says, well, I don't know who I am, lady. And she says, oh, the poor man. Yes, and besides, he's the only one who knows. Oh, good heavens. Of course, the slides missed the jokes. Oh, Captain, you always told me that you wanted a new ship, says Mr. Howell. If you remember who you are, I'll give you a 100-foot yacht. And Skipper, of course, still says, I don't know. And then Mr. Howell says 300 and 400. Honey, there are times, there we go. You think we packed it in the steam trunk. Lovey, if he's lost his memory, he just, I don't know how I went back a couple seconds. I am Skipper. There we go. 20 years. And then, we missed it. I hate these slides. And they said, you're Skipper. And he says, I am Skipper. And we cut to the professor saying, so to sum up, amnesia is still a medical mystery. It can last a day, a week, or 20 years. And Marianne says, 20 years? Oh, we'll be too old to be rescued by then. Wow, that's fascinating. In reality, we know that they're not rescued for 15 years later, so they're 5 years off. So she says, 20 years? Oh, we'll be too old to be rescued by then. And Mrs. Howell says, there must be some cure. Couldn't we try alcohol rubs? And Mr. Howell says, we've got to cure the captain. He's our friend. He's our leader. However, amnesia isn't hopeless. Anything can happen. Sometimes it'll clear it by itself, says the professor. Sometimes a blow on the head will snap the victim out of it. And that's what I wanted to mention. That's the old trope that went through a lot of TV shows back in the days where somebody would get hit on the head, they'd have amnesia, and then within the episode, they would explain, well, maybe if they got another bump on the head, they'll get their memory back. And that was great for comedic effect. And it, like I said, it was on a lot of shows. But I do specifically remember then having to get on the news and tell people, do not do this. Do not, I think it was on the news. They told people, they said, we know you're watching this on TV shows, but amnesia is a very dangerous thing. If somebody has amnesia, you report them to a doctor. Do not try to hit them on the head to regain their memory. That does not work. I specifically remember them warning people. Now, it would obviously, either they would show it at all, or they would preface the show saying, don't do this at home and it's all false and all that kind of stuff. You probably have somebody make a statement or some garbage. But they did mention that later on. I remember that. Like I said, it was on the news or something like that.
Yeah. Emerald Teague says amnesia shows up a lot in the show.
Yes, it does, doesn't it?
I'm not sure. This is the first time I think I remember seeing an amnesia episode.
Yeah, it's your first time, but it was common back in the 60s. Somebody's cooking again. Hold on. Oh, got a cough. Man, there's smoke in the house. Okay. Sometimes a blow on the head will snap the victim out of it. And here we go. Later on, we cut back to them, Skipper and Gilligan in the hut. And Skipper's telling Gilligan, wake up. What you say your name was again? He says, Gilligan, Skipper. And he says, okay, Gilligan, Skipper. He says, I can't sleep on this lower bunk. And then Gilligan says, I don't know what you're talking about. And Skipper says, down here, it feels like I'm sinking in quicksand. So Skipper's asking Gilligan if he could sleep on the top bunk. So, okay, let me think. I'm lighter, says Gilligan. So they decide to trade bunks. Bill Gilligan gets in the bottom bunk, and Skipper gets in the top bunk. Barely, as you can see here. Here comes Mrs. Howell. Dramatic music. And it looks like they're up to no good. Yes, my dear, I'm afraid it is. Oh, Thurston, I know you hate violence, she says. I know, but it's so physical. It's almost manual labor. I wonder if my muscles are up to it, he says. And she says, of course they are, darling. You're so big and strong. Now remember, the captain's in the bottom bunk. And it's for good cause, she says. You're so good, he says. So there goes Mr. Howell to sneak off into the hut. And here we are. And remember now, Mr. Howell thinks that Skipper is on the bottom. And he says, I hate to do this, Skipper, but it's for your own good. Bonk. And there he is. He hit Gilligan on the head instead, unfortunately. Poor Gilligan. And now he realizes what he's done. And Gilligan looks at him and he runs. What have I done? Oh no. And Mr. Howell runs out of the hut. And back to Mrs. Howell. And he says, oh, Lovey, I made a terrible boo boo. And she says, oh, you have to talk to him. He never does anything right. I can't go back there. I'm emotionally exhausted, he says. And she says, oh, darling, you're overwrought. And it's supposed to be overwrought. Anyway, oh, no, I wouldn't. And she says, I'll do it. And he says, no, I wouldn't hear of it. It's not ladylike. And he says, I won't tell a soul. So Mrs. Howell is going to go back and give it a try. I'll just close my eyes and pretend I'm bowling, she says. So now we have back where, there we are. He says, hey, Gilligan, Skipper, you're right. I don't like it up here. And Gilligan says, I don't like it down here too much either. And Skipper says, would you mind switching the hammocks again? I wish you would say that when you didn't have amnesia, he said. But here we are with them switching hammocks again. And here we have Mrs. Howell creeping into the hut with another coconut. There we go. And there's Mrs. Howell. And now she's thinking the Skipper is in the upper hammock. Here I go for spares, she says. And then she realizes it's Gilligan. Oh, Gilligan. Oh, poor Gilligan. And we cut to the next day. And we have them watching on as the professor is trying to hypnotize the Skipper. And he says, just relax and concentrate on this shell. Keep your eye on this shell. The old hypnosis trick. Now, Skipper, I want you to go back. The time before you were hit over the head. Well, I'd sure like to know who I am. Now go back, Skipper, says the professor. Go back in time to the good old days. Go back, Skipper. Back to the good old days. All right, Skipper, now you can wake up, says the professor. And as the Skipper wakes up, this is what he sees. And of course, Gilligan has a black eye. Hi, kids. We're going to be late for school, he says. Come on, let's play catch together. And he grabs a coconut and tosses it to Gilligan. And Gilligan says, he's acting like a kid. I think he thinks we're kids too. Gee, Professor, I think you took him back a little too far, says Ginger. It'll take him years to grow up, says Gilligan. And here they are trying again, and it's nighttime all of a sudden. Now you're growing up, Skipper. You're no longer a little boy playing with toy boats. Years are passing. You're now sailing around the world. And you've come to an island in the South Pacific. And there we go. A tiny island somewhere in the South Pacific. And Skipper falls asleep. All right, Skipper, you can wake up now. And this is what the Skipper sees. And this is what I prefaced before we started this episode about This is something that Hollywood not allow now. They would consider this offensive. Unfortunately, when it's not really offensive, and this is a comedy, and they meant no harm to anybody. But Skipper wakes up now, and he thinks that because he was told under hypnosis that he was at a South Sea island, he's thinking of when he was in the military at war with Japan during World War II. So he sees the other castaways as Japanese soldiers. So that explains the makeup. And unfortunately, I know it's racist, and I know now people say, "Well, that's racist, that's hateful, and all the terrible things." But no, they weren't, and they meant no harm and no racism towards anybody at the time. I'm surrounded by the enemy. Help, help, says the skipper, and he runs off. And we cut to the next day. So apparently, Skipper spent the entire night out by himself in the elements. So here we have with Professor and Gilligan walking up. Professor, I'm too tired to be tired. So they were looking for Skipper all night long. There's one place we miss. Where? And he says, I'm too tired to remember. And Mr. Howell has a radio, and he says, according to the reports by the Navy maneuvers, the ship should be passing here sometime this afternoon. So they realized that they needed to do something about the skipper because they need him to help them finish the lookout tower and to signal the Navy when they're doing their maneuvers. Without him, who will signal the ships? And Mrs. Howell says, I grew up on the yacht. I know something about signals. Yes, Thurston can signal for the cocktail hour. Good heavens, after the third round, what do you think I'm signaling for? Come on, Mr. Howell, I'll get the signal flag, says the professor. All right, you come along too, Lovey. And Professor says, here, Mr. Howell, you take these. And come along, Lovey, we'll practice. We'll pretend we're back on our yacht. And here we have the skipper looking on. And this is what he thinks he sees. Meanwhile, he's back now. Gorilla, this is where they suddenly have the armory hut again. What do you think? It's suddenly now they have a bunch of weapons and ammo again. Isn't that odd?
Yeah, I was gonna say, where the hell did that rifle and bayonet come from? And then even the professor's like, he's got a hold of all their guns and ammo. It's like, where the hell did it all come from?
Right, because didn't they establish that they were out of guns and ammo, right? I thought.
Well, they still had that pistol, but Gilligan dropped all the rounds inside the
Fire.
fire.
Yeah, but and then I thought there was another episode, wasn't there, where all their huts were destroyed or all their supplies or something? I'm trying to remember, but
Yeah, that was the same. That was this hut. That was supposed to be this hut.
that's what I thought.
Because
Or
because they had that flare gun, and Gilligan shot it off, and the flare landed in the supply hut.
right,
And
and
went
then all the
after.
explosives went off, right? I wonder if they're trying to establish that. You remember when the Japanese soldier landed on the island and took them hostage? Maybe this is stuff he left behind. I guess that might be possible, huh? So
That's
here we
all.
have this.
So I don't know if that rifle will fit in that sub. Would it?
Well, they never showed the inside of the sub, so it's kind of hard to tell.
Yeah, that thing was
It,
real small. It wouldn't have fit all the ammo and the gun. That guy will probably had. Wait, that guy had a gun on him, though he did have a rifle on him. So I
he
thought they were
did,
carrying pistols with them in case of
right?
capture.
Right. I'm guessing maybe they got this from him. And remember, most of the sub was underwater. They never really established how big it was. And we were just assuming because we were figuring the lagoon can't be that deep. But remember, according to the fantasy of the show, they're trying to lead us to believe that the lagoon is a lot deeper than it actually is. And by the way, for anybody wondering, in reality, because we've mentioned before that lagoon, they handmade it as part of the set. In the center, the lagoon at the deepest point was only 4 feet.
Yeah.
So when we're watching these shows, the entire time, just keep in mind that it's only 4 feet deep, but they make it appear to be a lot deeper than what it actually was, which makes sense.
No, but I just assumed he was using one of those midget subs that they had, like the ones that were just off the coast of Pearl Harbor there that got the one that got sunk, and then the Japanese had about five midget submarines there.
Yeah, I need to look it up and see. Well, I guess it would be a one man sub and look up to see how big they were. But you figure if they had a one man sub, at least there'd be at least enough room for him to lay down and room for supplies like for food and stuff and oxygen. So yeah, well, it's kind of stretching it, but it was kind of like MythBusters. It's possible maybe if you stretch the imagination, that is. So here we have Skipper grabbing all the ammo and the radio, and Gilligan is trying to help the girls complete the watchout tower. So we have the girls up on top, and Gilligan is handing them poles. And I wanted to point out here's another thing too is, and I even I hit back and replayed this scene a couple times, and I think it's right, but it's something you have to really notice. Anyway, without further ado, I'm going to show it. So Gilligan hands these poles. First, he hands one to Marianne. Now he's handing one to Ginger. And he says for Ginger to go to the left and for Marianne to go to the right. And they actually bump into each other. And he says, "No, I want you to pay attention to the subtitles and what Gilligan says." So we have Marianne and Ginger accidentally bump into each other with the poles. And Gilligan says, "No, whoa, take it easy now." And look at that. Look what Gilligan says. And I can tell you that that's swearing like that would not have been allowed on television in the 60s. So I'm
Yeah.
thinking, is that a mistake in the subtitles? So when I went back and I listened to it, it actually did sound like Gilligan said, "What the hell?" And I thought that's very odd because that's completely out of place for this show. You never hear anything. I mean, I know now people are saying, "What do you mean that's not a swear word? That's nothing." But back then, that was really, really big. So I thought it was strange to hear Gilligan say that, but it did sound like he said it.
Well, anyhow, welcome, Pleasant Valley Picker. Gilligan! Hello, little buddy!
Hello, PvP. Good to see you.
And Ginger or Marianne? Why not both? Threesome heaven.
Exactly right. And thank you PvP for the email. I did get it. I appreciate that. But the PvP, the email, it wasn't about the movie you sent because I do have that movie. I think what I was asking to remind me of was the movie you were talking about that had Christopher Lee as a vampire. That you were talking about that was an obscure movie that had him in it as Count something. I think that's the title that I wanted you to remind me of the name of, if that makes any sense to you. Okay. Did Gilligan say hell a year before Kirk? Yeah, I believe he did. Okay, so let me hide that. Okay, here we go. I'll tell you what, says Gilligan. Put your pole down, Ginger, and put your pole down. Now he tells them to put their poles down. Now he says, "Marianne, put your pole over there and lash it. I'll go get some more vines," says Gilligan. And look what we have here. We have the skipper, and he sees them up there, but as he sees it, he thinks that it's two Japanese soldiers working. So the skipper sneaks up on them. "All right, you two, stop the work and come down out of there." Of course, they're confused, and they're saying, "Well, Skipper, what's the matter with?" And he says, "Never mind all that whispering. I'm wise to all the tricks you Japanese soldiers pull." And here's where they say he thinks we're Japanese soldiers. "Come on down out of there, I'll shoot. I mean it, now move. I'm warning you, no tricks." And here we have back to the cave, of course, that we've seen in other episodes. And we have the skipper with Marianne and Ginger. And he has a radio, talking into the radio, thinking it's a transmitter. "This is the CO of the 177th Infantry, reporting from Guadalcanal. I've been cut off from my platoon by a Japanese patrol, but I've captured two Japanese soldiers, Roger and Over." And here the girls talking amongst themselves. He thinks he's back in the war, and he thinks we're men. And Ginger says, "How could anybody get that idea about me? Besides having amnesia, he's
Wait,
got eye trouble." She says,
yeah. Wait, I got a question though.
"Oops."
How
Hail
many?
PvP,
How
glad to
many
see
be?
you.
Hey, I just wanted to pop in. I probably won't stay long, but I wanted to pop in. Is this the episode with the Japanese guys from World War II or something?
No, well, there was an episode earlier in the season where a Japanese soldier who thought it was still World War II came aboard the island and he had a one man sub and he took them all hostage. But this is an episode where Skipper has amnesia, got hit on the head, and he thinks that the other castaways are Japanese soldiers.
Oh, okay. I'm getting confused because that earlier one you mentioned was probably possibly my one and probably my top two or three episodes of the whole series. Because I just thought that was a classic one. That was hilarious.
It was, and both of them, that episode and this one, they would deem problematic these days, and they probably wouldn't air them
Oh, you know what I
because,
really liked? What I really liked about episodes like these were they kind of were out of the ordinary for Gilligan. Like as much as I think Gilligan's a fun show, it's never been one of my favorite comedies because I thought it kind of had three seasons. There was a lot of repetition, if you know what I
right,
mean.
right,
Even though I thought it was very inventive and it was it was a lot of fun and it had a good cast, but there were only a few that that for like I bought the box sets when I saw them at Walmart for like I got the whole series for like $30 or whatever, and I binge watched the hell out of them like 15 years ago, and
right.
as much as I love watching them, there were only a few that stood out. And one was the one with the Japanese guys, and then there was the one with some gorilla running around on the I can't remember exactly, but it was that was one that stands out in my mind.
Well, I recommend you check it out. We covered that stream a few weeks ago with
Mm,
the gorilla.
excellent. I'll have to take a look at that then, because yeah, I remember something about someone running around in a bloody gorilla suit that was just so it was so weird. I really enjoyed that one. But anyway, I just wanted to pop on for a minute. I probably won't stay because you guys are far more knowledgeable about this series
Well,
than I am.
your knowledge of the show isn't a requirement to be on the panel. I encourage anybody and
Okay,
everybody to
well
be on
maybe
the
I'll
panel.
hang around then. I just finished my work week today, so
Well, I'm
I'm
glad to see that.
I'm looking forward to a 5 day weekend because here in my part of Canada, we have a holiday called Family Day on Monday. So I've actually got like a 5 day weekend now, which is kind of a nice luxury. So.
Well, that sounds great.
Yeah, well, it's only been a holiday here for like a couple of years. We never used to have any holidays in February, and then somehow I guess enough people wanted like a holiday after Christmas and New Year's to get them through the middle of winter. So then a lot of governments, it's not a holiday in every province, but a lot of provinces do have the Family Day holiday on the third Monday of February now. So yeah, it's kind of nice to just get a little extra break. So.
No, that makes
So
sense. I guess kind of make it break up the monotony because like you said, they have Christmas holiday and you don't get another one until a few months later. And for us in the U.S., our break in February, if I remember right, is our President's holiday.
Oh right, that's coming up this week too, isn't it?
I
that's
can't remember
Monday.
which week, but yeah, it should be soon. Oh yeah, it's Monday.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's probably the same day actually. Come to
Yep, that
think of it.
explains it, right? That would explain it.
Yeah, because I was just at work today, making my usual, 70 or 80 phone calls in a shift, and I do remember in my calendars that I was calling that there was President's Day mentioned. So yeah, that makes sense totally.
Yep. Yeah, they actually have Washington and Lincoln's birthdays both in this month, but they combine them into the one day called President's Day as far as a legal holiday for us to get off work.
Right, I remember that. I remember that. There's that film that which I was one of my favorite Christmas films called Holiday Inn. If you've ever seen
Yeah,
that
Big
one.
Crosby.
Yeah, Bing Crosby, Fred Astaire, and it has the President's Day. I think there's a whole song they do on President's Day. They have all those musical numbers through the film, right, for every holiday.
Yeah, I'm just not a fan of Bing Crosby.
I think it's a great film, though. I think
Well,
it's.
because you don't know about his background. When I was a kid,
Oh,
I didn't.
I know.
Yeah, when I was
I
a kid,
know.
I didn't know about his background either, and I watched the old road movies with him and Bob Hope. But then as I got older, I found out what kind of a monster he really is, and
Oh yeah.
yeah,
The
I
thing
don't.
is, the
Yeah, I
thing
can't.
is, even if an artist is a dick, I really try to separate the art from the artist. If
Well,
the art is good
I
enough,
usually do too, right? Like William
yeah,
Shatner, I think is very conceited, but I like him as an actor, and I like Star Trek.
yeah.
But it
Well,
depends on the level of the depravity. If it's so low, I just can't overlook it.
yeah.
And the
Well,
way I
I'm
have
not
to
a
say,
big.
Bing Crosby drove his kids to suicide or self deletion. I know we can't say that on
Yeah, I know. I know.
YouTube, which is one of the most despicable crimes ever.
Well, I didn't want to bring it up, but I just wanted to mention that
Yeah,
as far as when I watch Christmas films, Holiday Inn is one of the favorite ones, and Bing might have been a jerk, but that's one film of his I can watch. I'm not a Crosby fan by any means, and that's probably actually the only Crosby film I ever watched, to tell you the truth, because
that's the movie that Holiday Inn was actually named after.
I just like Holiday Inn because it's my main part of it is Fred Astaire and his great dance numbers.
Yeah, I
You
like
know,
Fred
like
Astaire.
like when he's totally, down on life, when he gets to the Holiday Inn, he's totally hammered out of his mind. And he's doing that great dance number.
Right.
It's so hilariously funny. It's like I just love that scene. So
Yeah.
I know all. I've heard all the stuff about Bing. He was not a nice guy, apparently,
Well, you're
obviously.
saying it. That's a very light way of saying it, I guess you could say.
Well, as I say, I do try and separate the art from the artist. Pop,
Which I respect. And I appreciate that.
yeah. But it's like if a film is great, it's like one bad apple in the film doesn't ruin the film for me, so to speak.
Okay.
You
Okay.
know, because I like Fred Astaire and the rest of the cast. I mean, the ladies.
Right.
I can't remember the lady's name that was
That's all
there.
right. If we could talk about that next time, possibly.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I
Yeah,
didn't
I
mean.
need to
I
continue this.
I
I
really
apologize.
didn't mean to sidetrack it. That's why
That's
I
all
was
right. Yeah,
going to stay
Gilligan's
long.
Gorilla doesn't have much time. It's really late for him. It's going on 11 o'clock at night, and he's got to
Yeah.
work in the morning. I
Well,
apologize.
yeah. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, guys. I really didn't intend to have the discussion go on like this.
No, you didn't
So
intend to. No, I know. No, it's fine. You're totally fine.
yeah. So anyway, I'll just take a back seat if you guys want to chat.
Or you're welcome to stay if you want.
Oh
You're
yeah.
welcome to join
I'll
us with
just
us if
stay.
you'd like.
I'll just stay, and you guys go on.
Oh, okay. So this is where Ginger says, besides having amnesia, he's got eye trouble. They're referring to Skipper thinking that they're Japanese men. And Marianne says, maybe if we were a little more friendly, then we could reach him, says Marianne. And here's where they try to tell him you can't send messages with the radio, it acts as a receiver. And he says, of course, never mind any of your tricks. And here, of course, this is what he sees. Like what? Well, like a woman. Being born that way helps, she says. And then he is confused because they sound like women, but in his eyes, they look like men. So he says, you're one of those ventriloquists. You sound like a woman, but you look like a Japanese soldier. And here's where Ginger says, Skipper, isn't it obvious that I'm a woman? And that's a nice try, but not quite good enough, he says. And Marianne says, oh, Skipper, here, sniff this perfume just once. And he says, that's probably poison perfume gas. And look at this, says Ginger.
I have to agree. Perfume is kind of like toxic gas. Like I live in an apartment, and when I get on the elevator, to go to work, and some woman has just been on there a few minutes before with heavy perfume, it's like, oh my God, gag me.
Yeah, sometimes people tend to put a little too much on. I agree.
Oh, very much. Yeah.
And I'm trying to catch the clip. There it is. And Ginger does this. Says, here, look at this.
Ooh, yeah. I
But
look at that.
this is what the skipper sees, unfortunately.
So the skipper's hallucinating, I take it.
Well, he got a hit on the head. He has amnesia. And then the professor hypnotized him to make
Wow.
him mentally go back to the World War II days, which is why he thinks that he sees Japanese soldiers.
Actually, this is kind of awesome. I don't remember this one, but this looks really good. Wow.
I wouldn't be surprised if they removed it from the DVD collection.
Maybe they did because bought them at Walmart. They were like, I don't know, 5.99 a piece or something with taxes. I think it was around $20 for the whole series, and I binge watched the hell out of them, over about a week or two, and I really enjoyed them. But it's like a series. I can watch this one once and have a good memory, but I don't need to rewatch most of the episodes. But there were a few that stood out for me.
Yeah, I think they're really good. They're hit and miss, but I think, in my opinion, I like most of them. But
I
of course,
like the
we're still
show.
on the
Yeah. There's just so
we're
many
only on the
other
first season
shows I
still.
haven't seen yet, right? That I got to watch. So,
Oh well, then that's great. There's plenty out there for you to still enjoy.
by the way, I was just wondering, Pop, how far are you through the series now? Are you getting near the end of Gilligan, or?
No, this is we're almost near the end of the first season.
Oh, you're only in the first season, so oh gosh, okay.
Right, you can tell because you can tell because it's black and white. The
Black and
second and
white,
third second and third season are in color.
right? I should have remembered. Yeah, obviously.
Oh,
Okay.
no problem. I don't expect everyone to remember that. It's
No,
okay.
I was just remembering when you mentioned, what you were going to do when you followed it up, like you were thinking of maybe Lost in Space or something. But
No,
that's
that's when
obvious.
no, that's when I'm done with Star Trek the animated series
Oh, animated. Okay, okay, okay. I got
on
it mixed
Mondays.
up.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
Okay.
no
Sorry.
problem.
Sorry. I
No,
will
no,
be
nope.
quiet. I'll let you
It's
continue
okay.
now.
Yeah, I've only got a couple episodes left of the Star Trek the animated series, so yeah, I'm deciding on what I'm going to be doing
Yeah.
after that. I'll
Actually,
put a poll and go ahead.
I would have joined you and Jill on those, but I unfortunately, even though I found a good source for season one episodes, I haven't been able to find anything for the last 3 or 4 of the second season, unfortunately. So I probably won't be able to join none of those, but
Oh,
you know, it's
Well, we
all
can
you
always do
guys are
what?
almost done anyway, though. So
No, I was just going to say we can always do watch parties if you want. I can show them to you
the only trouble is, Pop, you do those what on is it Mondays?
on a Monday. Yeah.
Yeah, I usually don't get home from work till like maybe 7:30 Pacific time. So
Right, but I was thinking we could do a watch party like on maybe a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday.
oh yeah, that'd be
We,
awesome.
yeah,
Really, if you
yeah,
want to do that, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. They're
email
only a
me.
half hour each.
That'd be great if you want to email me and set that up. That'd be
yeah.
that'd be awesome, Pop. Thank you.
Well, let's
Also,
plan on then.
look at the private chat. That's what I use.
Yeah, put it in the private chat
I
and
did.
or else just email
No,
me.
no, no, no. PvP. What he's saying is look at the private chat.
Oh yeah, I do see. Yeah, I have. I think
That's the
Gorilla.
website. That's the website Gorilla uses to watch this stuff. And you
I think Gorilla recommended that to me before, and yeah, that's a very good website. Yeah, thank
right,
you, Gorilla.
and you'll find the episodes on there as well.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Yeah,
Excellent.
that helps.
Because
Thank you,
there was
Gorilla.
some site I went to, and the season one episodes were all fine, but when I clicked on the season two, for some reason they'd actually put season two of TOS instead of the animated ones, which is kind of ridiculous. But somebody had, I think, messed it up, right? So
Well, we are right. When you have just people on the internet, it's like Wikipedia. There's mistakes because it's not exactly professional at compiling the information.
yeah, because I remember a couple weeks ago I tried to go on one of these second season animated series that you were going to watch. And when I put it on, it was like, oh, that's the second season of the original series of Trek live action.
Well,
So yeah,
the next thing we're covering is called Albatross. So see if you can find that
okay,
on the link that. If you cannot find it, they'll let me know and we'll do a watch party this
yeah,
weekend.
okay. I will give it a go after the stream tonight and to see it. I will check out the link Gorilla's put in here and
Well,
give
you
it a
got plenty of time because we're not reviewing it until Monday. So
yeah.
anytime you feel like it.
Yeah, I know you've kind of delayed the animated series for a while now.
I know, and I feel really bad. So I'm hoping to
No
at least
worries.
make it through to the end and complete it. I'm hoping. So
No
I'm hoping
worries.
it'll be back Monday.
Yeah, well, I guess Joel has to do some family time too, I believe, this week. So,
Possibly, yeah,
she was away too. So,
yeah,
anyway, it's all good. It's all good.
yeah. That happens.
It's all good.
So
I don't worry about that. It's all good.
Yeah, and so here's where we have Skipper unfortunately telling Ginger, "Well, I must say you're a lousy actor," and of course, Ginger takes offense to that. And now we have the Howes ridiculously trying to flag down the Navy. And what was that signal for? She says. And he says, I think it means the polo field is clear on Sunday, which of course that's all they know is polo and stuff. If this doesn't work out, I have one in reserve, Lovey. And he pulls out this flag. Of course, the Howe flag means money, of course. This one gets them every
I love it.
time. Oh, that should do it.
I just love where they get all this stuff from. Like they've actually did they bring the flags with them on the 3 hour cruise or did they manufacture them on the island?
Well, it looks like it was handmade, so I'm guessing they probably used it from part of the sail or something from part of the ship. A lot of things they have on here are things they salvaged from the ship, or things they found on the island, or things that people have left on the island when they have
I love it.
visitors.
Yeah, I love it.
So Mr. Howell says the dollar sign is the universal code,
Certainly
and
is.
here we have the skipper looking on, and this is what the skipper sees, and unfortunately, he thinks Mr. Howell is waving a Japanese flag.
This is hilarious. What number is this in season one, Pop?
30.
Episode 30.
30. So it's near the end of the season.
It
There's
is,
probably what
yes.
about 39 episodes in those days.
Yeah,
Just a second. I need to look.
yeah.
Give me just a second.
I know a lot of shows back then were around 39.
36 episodes. 36.
Okay, close enough. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I will have to try and find this one to rewatch because this is. I don't remember this one, but this is pretty. This is pretty strange even for Gilligan.
It is, and it's number 30 out of 36. So yeah, hopefully that's on your set.
I'll have to try and find
I'm
it.
hoping
Yeah.
it's not censored yet.
Hopefully not.
So Mr. and Mrs. Howell, they see the skipper with the gun, and Mr. Howell says, "Hello, skipper. What are you doing with that bayonet?" And skipper says, "Never mind that. Come out of there, Japanese soldiers, and you're my prisoners."
Oh
And Mr.
my.
Howell says, "We aren't Japanese. Yes, we are. Don't worry, Lovey. Oh, we Japanese. That's better. Now, what's your rank?" Yes, Jerilla, are you trying to say something? Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna catch up on the chat here real quick. We're falling a little bit behind.
Please do. Yes, go ahead.
Uh,
Thank you.
yeah, PvP says, "Oh, it was Uncle was a vampire, 1959."
Yeah, that's the one. That's right. That's right. Thank you, PvP.
Yeah,
Yeah, I will
Herc
actually.
one-
I will actually try and send you a link to that because I do believe there's a decent quality one on YouTube, Pop. So I will send you a link later on tonight.
Very cool. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
All right, then Herc 130 says Crosby did those shows with Bob Hope.
Yes, the road
Then,
to, they called them the road movies. They're like Road to Zanzibar, Road to this, Road to that. You know.
Yeah, they did a whole series of those. Yeah.
then Herc 130 says Johnny Carson was a son of a bitch too.
Yeah, he was. He was
Then
very rich, but yeah, unfortunately, it went to his head.
then PvP here said is violating rule number 6 by apologizing, saying sorry, chat, not my intention to sidetrack.
Well, I just thought I thought I was sidetracking it, and I didn't mean to.
Yeah, and welcome Cam's Crash Courses.
Hey, Cam Cam, good to see you.
Says hello everyone. Nosferatu is
Nosferatu.
a syndicated channel here in Vermont right now, so I'm watching it again.
Good
What do you know? I
stuff.
just covered that last night.
That was an awesome stream, by the way. I really enjoyed that, Pop.
Yeah, me too. I loved it. My God, it was so great to cover that movie. It's such a good movie.
Yeah, I couldn't believe, even though I joined like probably an hour late at least, it was like so great to join in and talk with everybody and offer a few thoughts of my own. And it
Yep.
was such a really rich, interesting discussion. It's like when you get people that are knowledgeable together and they can actually appreciate, a great film and discuss it and examine it. It's such a enjoyable, refreshing experience, right?
It is, and I have to shout out Hungry Boy. My God, he's an artist, And he brings so much information to the stream that he knows about artists and their influences and colors and angles and
Yeah,
everything. Oh, it was very invaluable. I'm glad he was there.
yeah. Hungry Boy is very, very, very good. Very good.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I feel very lucky that he was on the stream,
Well, the thing
and I hope
is,
he returns next time.
I'm into art too, and I got my bachelor's degree in fine art like 30 years ago. But
Oh,
I think,
nice.
oh yeah, yeah, I did the whole thing for 4 years. But I think Hungary's got even a little deeper knowledge than I do because I haven't actually painted in like 15 years. Where I know as Hungary still keeps his hand in it, so to speak. So yeah, I do dissuade to his knowledge.
Yeah, he knows what he's talking about. So yeah,
Yeah, he's very
I
knowledgeable.
love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
All
so here
right.
we are. Herc 130. Go
Uh,
ahead, Gorilla.
yeah, Herc 130 said, I totally forgot the professor's name was Roy Hinkley.
Yes, it was.
Roy Hinckley. Oh wow.
Then Cam says hi to Herc 130. Herc 130 says, hi, hey, Cam's Crash Courses. Are you following me? Do I owe you money? LOL. Then Cam says hi to Cap. Herc says yes and yes. Or Cam says yes and yes.
Yes and
Herc,
yes.
Herc's laughing. And Cam says great show, pop culture and PvP.
Oh,
Thank
hey,
you, Cam Cam.
thanks,
I
Cam
see how
Cam.
we're ranking that. I see how we're ranking that.
Well, we're glad you're here, Cam Cam. Glad you could join us.
Yeah, thanks, Cam Cam.
And I have to admit, I couldn't do this show without Gorilla. He's also a big part of it too. He
Yeah,
even
well,
makes
actually,
he
Cam
even
Cam
makes
should have
everyone.
mentioned Gorilla because Gorilla's like the co-host usually.
And Gorilla he has more on this than I do. He's actually done a few appearances on the show.
Okay. Wow. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. He
I'm
played a
just
gorilla and an ape, and some of his cousins have been on here and everything.
yeah, I'm just a minor. Just a minor standby on this stream. Occasional appearance.
So here we have the skipper taking Mr. and Mrs. Howell captive. And now this is highly insensitive. I know this is
I just
something. I mean,
love
not only with the makeup, but the way they're talking about. You would not see that now. That's why I'm guessing this episode may have been pulled from your DVD set. I don't know,
it.
but it's in the Blu-ray
Yeah,
set, so I'm guessing
I
it should
might.
be in your
I
DVD set.
Well, I
Well,
sadly I sold them off after I watched them, so I don't have them anymore. But
Uh,
probably the Blu-ray is the way to go anyway, I guess.
it is. It's much better picture quality.
I'm sure I can probably find them online if I search for a while though.
Probably so. So I don't want to read these dialogue because that's going to sound offensive, and I don't want to have people complain about me.
You don't
So I'll
want to
leave it
get
up to you, the audience, to read
you
it.
don't want to get a strike either. Don't take a chance.
I know. I'm afraid of just showing the slides might be bad,
Yeah,
but hopefully
that
not.
that algorithm could not be good.
So that's why I'm going to go through the slides, but I'll let you, the audience, read them as I go through them. So hopefully you have this enlarged on your computer screen or whatever you're on, so you can
Oh
read it.
yeah, I'm seeing it all good here. I do love the costuming there though. It's quite effective.
Yeah. And here we are. Where there. Let's just say if you're not able to read, let's just say the Howls are trying to attempt to talk like Japanese, which is not considered appropriate now.
I don't even get Japanese out of looking at that. I get more like some weird, I don't know, some weird pop song or something from current day.
Yeah, but back
It's
there,
like,
I know.
"Whoa, whoa," those kind of singers that sing like that.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, Herc appreciates me. He gives me an A+.
There
Oh,
we
there you
are.
go.
Thank you, Herc.
There you go.
I
Yeah,
completely
and,
agree with that.
and
Gorilla
Cam
deserves an A+.
yeah, and Cam says, I love Gilligan's Island. And hi, gorillas. I'm a supporter. Saturday cartoons. Cheers, bud.
There you
Yeah.
go. Yes, absolutely. So here we have, he's in Tokyo. Oh no, I think big. that was his real child, which, like I said, I don't want to read all the text here. Well, I want you to talk big. I want names and information. Skipper still thinks that they're Japanese soldiers, and he's trying to get them to give their names and ranks. And Mr. Howell says, American fleet, you signal, they come ashore. So Mr. Howell is trying to explain to him that they need him to signal the rescue fleet when it arrives. The reason why they were building the platform in the first place. Skipper said, I don't believe you. Aha, aha, says the skipper with the gun. We surrender on one condition. What's that? You don't hurt us, says Mr. Howell. That's a ruck, says Skipper. Now move out, move. So he takes the Howells hostage as well, almost poking Mrs. Howell in the bum with the bayonet.
Ouch.
And here we have the professor,
Yeah, that would
still hard
got
at work.
that would gotten him canceled nowadays.
Oh, yeah, if we counted how many times it would have gotten him canceled in this episode, we'd have. In fact, Matt, you could make it a drinking game. We would be completely wasted by now, right?
Well, I was just going by the Me Too moments.
I know. So sad that they ruined comedy.
Well, just thinking that, you could poke, Mrs. Howell in the butt with anything would be like get you canceled, right?
Oh, right. You can't even point anything at it. You can't
Couldn't
even
even-
draw attention to it.
You couldn't even suggest it.
Nope. So here we have the professor still working, and he hears this, hey, professor, the girls are missing. So here we have Gilligan, and he says, uh-huh, and Mr. and Mrs. Howell. So they realize that everyone's missing. So Marianne, Ginger, the skipper, uh-huh. And the professor walks off, and immediately Gilligan goes into a panic and says, Professor, Professor, Professor. And the professor comes back and says, I thought you were missing too, says Gilligan. And the professor says, I'm afraid there are some things missing that's more disturbing, says the professor. What do you mean, says Gilligan. Well, taking the circumstances as we know them, projecting forward possible conclusions, easy for you, difficult for me, says Gilligan. And Professor says, I'm afraid we've done something to make the skipper think that he's probably holding the other passengers somewhere. Yes, except for that one place you forgot. This is where they kind of jump the shark a little bit because Gilligan just for some reason happens to know where the skipper is keeping them hostage, which I thought was, it's like, okay, but I know the plot's got to move on and they don't have a lot of time.
Okay. Cam says, I watch Carson on another syndicated channel at 10 p.m. and antenna TV. There, then, and greetings, Lemon Pie. Welcome.
Well, Lemon Pie, good to see you.
And he says, yo, Cam, Herc Wave. And Cam says, howdy, Lemon Pie.
I still watch, I go and watch the clips of Johnny Carson on YouTube with the celebrity guests. Johnny Carson was my favorite talk show host. When he went off the air, I stopped watching late night TV. A friend of mine tried to get me to watch David Letterman, and I tried a couple episodes, but it just wasn't my bag. I didn't like Jay Leno. I didn't like the red-haired guy, whatever his name is, and I just dropped out of it completely. I stopped watching late night TV. They were not funny anymore. I could tell they were written by committees. But anyway, so the professor says, yes, except for that one place you forgot. And, of course, Gilligan says, I just remembered the place I forgot. Come on. So there they go. And here we have the Howells and the ladies, Mr. and Mrs. Howell, and the ladies trapped inside. And we have the professor and Gilligan. See, I was right. They're all in there. Only person I can't see is the skipper. Good, we better sneak in and free him before he gets back, says the professor. So here we are, where they're sneaking, like they said. They came, get us out of here. Shh, quiet, girls. So as you can see here, the castaways are trying to warn Professor and Gilligan that it's a trap. But of course, there's no time for that, and Professor and Gilligan aren't listening. And of course, they're all screaming, and this is where the skipper takes them hostage. Put your hands up, you two. Get over there, he says. Aha, he says. And of course, he looks right at the camera. 6 Japanese prisoners in 15 minutes. I may take the whole Japanese army single-handed.
Yeah. Is this the first time they break the fourth wall in TV?
No, they all know they no. Remember, that's why I showed you that episode of Laurel and Hardy. Here's the difference: is as we've seen before, Skipper often looks at the camera, especially when he gets exasperated. But this is the first time Skipper has actually spoken to the camera.
Yeah,
And remember,
that's why.
Gilligan did in an earlier episode.
Yeah, that's why I was thinking this. Oh, did he? I thought
Yep.
this is the first time it was noticeable. Then.
Yeah, Gilligan did the same thing in an earlier episode. He looked at the camera and then said something to it.
So Gilligan broke the fourth wall.
Yes, Gilligan broke it first.
Okay.
Like I said, they both, Skipper looks at the camera all the time, but actually speak, and break the fourth wall. Gilligan did it first, right? And this is the
Yeah,
first time Skipper officially did it.
I guess to actually break the fourth wall, you actually have to talk to the audience, don't you?
Well, first you're not supposed to look, but then under certain circumstances, like for comedic effect, they can. Like I referenced, Laurel and Hardy used to do that.
Oh
So did
yeah,
Fred Flintstone. So did Ralph Cramden from the Honeymooners,
yeah,
right? Because they were all based
yeah.
on Laurel and Hardy.
But I think
And
the look is different than breaking the wall because I think if you're breaking the wall, you have to say something to
right,
the
actually
audience.
talking to the audience, right? Talking to the
Exactly.
audience, or like what most people do not like is when they wink at the audience. That seems to be irritating when that happens.
Well, yeah, I think you should actually speak. Winking does kind of seem irritating, actually.
Well, yeah, I think it's insulting to the intelligence of the audience.
Yeah, I would say, either just, don't address the audience or just, talk directly to them would be my
Well,
preference.
right, if you're going to, make sure you have a good reason.
Mm. Yeah, it has to be relevant to the storyline, I think.
Yes. And so here we have Professor talking to Gilligan, saying, Gilligan, I don't want to worry the others, but you're our only hope. And Gilligan says, okay. And I want to cover that. Hold on, let me go back here. And you can see here, I'm glad I caught this. The professor, you could tell, was trying not to laugh, obviously. So anyway, he says, but you're our only hope. And Gilligan says, okay. He says, now, talk to the skipper like his little buddy. And Gilligan says, okay. And then Gilligan does this.
Yeah.
Hey, soldier, don't you remember me? I'm your little buddy.
Yeah. Just a sec. Night, night, Cam. You have a good night.
Good night, Cam. You take care.
Night, night, Cam.
Yeah, thanks for stopping by. And Skipper says, I don't have any little buddy. And that's when you realize, wait, what the heck? What are you doing out of here? Get back. And Gilligan hops back into the cage. Skipper, you sure you don't remember your little buddy? If you're my little buddy, why are you wearing Japanese uniform? And of course, now we see it through the eyes of Skipper.
I just love that. That's a great still. I love the
Yes.
mustache on Gilligan.
Yeah.
He's like, is
Yeah.
that a Fu Manchu type of mustache?
I think so, yeah.
That's
And
fun.
Professor says, yeah, how come I'm wearing Japanese uniform? But he's got the gun, what he thinks counts. Sorry about the jokes.
My,
I'm missing them with the slide, guys. And
that's
Mr.
really
Howell
great.
steps in and says, look, soldier, I think it's time for a coconut break, says Mr. Howell. And Skipper's thinking about it. Yeah, let me have the bayonet. I'll give it a little jab. But of course, Skipper's not going to have any of that. This calls for drastic action. Why don't we charge, they said. And he can't kill all of us, says Mr. Howell. That's right, says the professor. And Mr. Howell, of course, says, I'll stay here and tend to the wounded as he heads to the back of the cave. And Professor says, it's our only chance. Oh, Professor,
So
there they are. The Navy ships are out. Yeah?
at this point, Skipper's got everybody in jail, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I figured so. From what I could see in the background.
So Gilligan says,
Wow.
oh, Professor, there they are. The Navy ships are there. And we get a little bit of stock footage. So we actually
Nice.
have the Navy within viewing distance of the island.
Nice.
And the skipper is saying, don't even sound an alarm or I'll fire, he says. And of course, they say, Skipper, you got to believe me. And we are all your friends. And here you are. And here, of course, we have the professor trying to hypnotize him still. And Skipper isn't having any of that. And you've got to forget everything else, they say. You are the skipper. And unfortunately, Mr. Howe and Gilligan are watching the pendulum. And now we have Mr. Howe and Gilligan both thinking that they're the skipper. And Skipper, all right, sailor boy, stomach in, chest out. I won't stand for mutiny on my ship. Your ship, I'm the skipper. I'm the skipper. And they argue back and forth, both thinking they're the skipper. And of course, Gilligan, thinking he's the skipper, has to stick his stomach out.
Well, he's trying to stick his chest out, I would think, but he doesn't have much of
Chest
a
or
chest.
stomach, right? No, he's too skinny. But I think he's doing it right because obviously Alan Hale had that big gut. So I think
That's
that's
very funny. Yeah.
yeah, I can see sticking your chest out, but your gut.
Yeah, it's probably a tribute to, Alan Hale. Yeah.
Yeah. And so here we are with Mrs. Howe saying, what's happened to Gilligan? What's happened to Thurston? I'll report you to the Admiral and I'll have you court martialed, says Gilligan. He thinks he's the skipper, says Ginger. Everybody thinks they're the skipper except the skipper, says Marianne. I'm the skipper. No, I'm the skipper. And here comes Mr. Howell. I'm sorry, the professor to break it up. And Skipper's, of course, is quiet, you prisoners, quiet. And Skipper comes to the cage and says, will you prisoners be quiet? And they keep shouting quiet, but they're busy arguing in there. They're not paying attention to him. Arguing continues. So he takes the door off and he says, will you be quiet? And as he says, will you be quiet? This is what happens. Gilligan turns around and hits him with the spyglass.
Finally. It's about time.
Right. And they go back to arguing. And of course, there's Skipper stumbling around. Arguing continues. And here we have Skipper regaining his senses.
Finally, he comes back to reality.
Right. And he's confused because he doesn't know what they're doing. And he says, Gilligan, Mr. Howell, what are you arguing about? And here's what Skipper does. Punk. Will you pipe down? So, of course, just that easily, of course, like I said, the old trope back in the days, if you get amnesia, all it takes is another bunk on the head to get rid of it. Which I do not, kids out there listening, I do not recommend you do this at home. It does not work.
It takes me back to that Star Trek episode of Miri. Bonk, bonk, kid on the head or whatever. I guess the kid said bonk,
Okay.
bonk on the head.
Oh, after being headbutted, Gilligan and Mr. Howell, as you can see, are starting to come to their senses. Gilligan, I'll have you know I'm the only skipper here, says Skipper. That goes for you too, Mr. Howell. Or that goes for you too, Howell. And Mr. Howell says, he knows my name. And Gilligan says, mine too. The skipper's cured. He's well now, they say. Now everyone's excited. They're happy to see the skipper back. And here we are back at the lookout tower.
Nice.
Skipper, any signs of anything, Gilligan? And there's Gilligan looking with the spyglass. No signs of the ships, he says. Don't worry, Skipper. It's an off season for rescue, says Mr. Howell. So now that Skipper's feeling bad because they missed their rescue attempt because he wasn't quite there and what was happening. And here we have Gilligan, who accidentally falls off the tower. And Skipper picks him up. Gilligan, you all right, little buddy? Oh, what happened? Where am I? He says. Who are you?
Oh, no.
Oh, no, not again, says Skipper.
Here we go.
And that concludes this episode of Gilligan's Island.
Well, I don't remember this one, but definitely an entertaining one for sure with, the captain having hallucinations.
It is, and I'm glad we have it because I'm glad it's not censored. Like I said, if it hasn't already been censored, I'm sure they'll plan on doing it. I can pretty much guarantee you I'm going to do my homework because this is owned by CBS. So that means it's probably showing on the Paramount Network, Paramount Plus.
Oh, they'll probably censor that for sure.
I know. I'm going to look and find out. Wherever this is streaming, or even on like Antenna TV, Me TV, and all those. I bet you it's not showing this episode anymore.
Yeah, they probably. Well, they've got the history of that, right? Do you remember the Twilight Zone episode with George Takei?
Absolutely. That was only shown once, and then never again until the 90s.
Well, you know what, Pop? I got news for you. I was one of those lucky few that back in the '80s, I was doing tape trading with a lot of folks.
Uh huh.
We you get a magazine that was into like tape trading, and you'd put ads in it. And
Right.
I got contacts with like half a dozen people, and there was actually a guy in Saskatchewan that said he had actually recorded the George Takai, band episode off the TV back then, and he actually mailed me a copy on tape of it. Yeah, it wasn't best quality, but it was watchable, and it was like, oh my goodness. I
Yep.
can kind of understand why he's banned because George Takei's character, they touched on, the Second World War and, all that horror
Harry
and
Carey.
Harry Carey. And yeah, it was a very intense Twilight Zone. And I can kind of understand why he got censored, even though I don't agree with that. But I was so glad. I feel privileged still to have actually seen that episode back in the '80s, just because of an online friend that we exchanged. Back then you would just there was like collector magazines where that have ads, right?
Oh
And
yeah.
it'd be like, you have this, you want this, and you just basically you'd write the person's address down. You just send them like a letter because there was no email back then, right? You send them a letter and you go, "Hey, I'll send you my list of all this stuff. What have you got to trade?" And I remember sending huge pages after pages of lists with online
Wow.
traders, and that's how I first saw the invaders, for instance,
Oh, with Roy Finnis.
with Roy Thinnes. Yeah,
Oh
I
yeah, I
found
like that show. I have it on my
I
server.
I love that show, and I'd never seen it until the '80s, right? Because they never showed it on my local channels when I was a kid. So I found a contact in Seattle who could basically record them for me, every weekend off of the local station there, and he would mail me like back then it was like Betamax tapes, and we'd send
Right.
those back and forth, and it was great because I remember the first time I saw the Invaders, I was like blown away at how cool the show was and how great Roy Finnis was, you know, in the role, right? He was playing, and
Well,
it's
yeah,
just
and it was made at the same time as Star Trek, so there was a lot of Star Trek people on there, a lot of Mission Impossible people on there.
yeah, it was right around that time. I think it was like 67, 68 when the Invaders was
Uh
on.
huh. Yep.
So Trek would have still been going definitely, but it was actually a January replacement mid-season show when it came in. It started, I think, in January of '67, and it got like basically that half season and then a second full season in '68. It was only like 48 episodes, I think. Actually,
I can't remember.
the first season is by far the best, though, I think, because in the second season, it seemed like the writing was a little weaker, even though there were some great episodes. But overall, I love that show, even though the special effects were kind of weak, for the day. They weren't up to Star Trek level for sure, but I still think it was a great show, and you know, I think Vincent's character, portrayed by Roy Thinnes, was really one of the great characters in sci-fi.
It was. It was. I just got and I know I brought it up before when other people ask, if I'm a fan of like the TV show V, the series, and that kind of stuff. And when
Right,
I try to tell them that I'm tired of the trope where aliens happen to be look inhuman, they're in human form to save money on budget.
right.
And people always say, but no, that's a part of the plot is they take the human form. And I say, I know, it works great for the script, but the whole point is they do it to save money. And I always try to refer them to the Invaders series. I said, look, there's a series called Invaders that already did that years before V even came out.
Yeah, I think Vader's must have been. Was it the first series that actually did that trope? Like it might have been.
It may have been there were movies obviously who had done it before that, but as far
Well,
as
yeah,
TV series, it might have been the first.
obviously films, but I mean, as far
Yeah,
as
like I married a monster from outer space, like that was he was in human form, but
right, but
yeah,
as
but there's
far
a
as
lot
the
of movies.
TV, as a episodic week to week TV series, I can't think of one earlier than the Invaders that would have actually done that. But yeah, I mean, the thing with the Invaders is the special effects were sometimes they were great, sometimes they were so so.
They
Quinn
were okay for
Martin.
the time. The show had good production value. It was one of Quinn Martin's first efforts.
Yeah, well, the thing was,
So
Quinn Martin was like a top producer back in the '60s. He had
60s
like
and 70s, yeah.
he had the Fugitive, and he had like was it Quincy, and he had like oh, I can't remember how many.
Streets of San Francisco, Manic,
Cannon, Manic.
Banachek,
He had like at least half
Mark,
a dozen
right,
classic series, right? He was a
Barnaby
master.
Jones,
Barnaby Jones, yeah. I mean, with Buddy Ebsen, from
yeah.
the Beverly Hillbillies. He had so many great shows running. I mean, it's kind of mind-boggling. This guy was producing so much
Well,
great
there, I
content.
recommend if you, right, I recommend if you're able to get your hands on them and watch them again. They're still they still hold up after all this time.
Oh, you
I
know what?
just rewatched Streets of San Francisco just last year, and it still holds up.
That's a Kirk Douglas's son, right?
Michael Douglas.
Michael Douglas, yeah.
Carl Malden.
Oh, Carl Malden, he's great. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Quentin produced so much great content in the '60s and '70s, and sadly, I think a lot of folks don't even know about him now, which is kind of sad,
Well,
really.
it's just generations.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, by the time we got to the '80s, everything started turning over to spelling, Aaron Spelling, and Dynasty, and I just it wasn't my. I didn't like soap opera. I don't like
soap
soap operas.
soap
It's never
opera
been my
prime
thing.
time. Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember that.
primetime soap operas. Yeah, that was when it was time for me to tune out.
Yeah, I remember
But
that too.
but I know I need to kind of cut this short because, like I said, for Gorilla, it's going on
Oh,
11:30.
damn!
Poor
Sorry,
guy.
didn't mean to go on and on, but
Oh no, it's all right. I was going on with you. We were both talking about it. But well, here's what I'll do. PvP is I'm going to have another rumblings from the lab here coming up soon. And can you please, if you can, join me and we'll talk about this old stuff.
what day are you gonna have that pop?
Well, I usually do it spontaneously whenever I can get people that have time to watch it.
Okay,
So
because
when you get a chance, email me and let me know when you got a little bit of time.
sure, I generally work Monday through Wednesday right now. Because I'm only working like a little over half a week. So anytime, generally being between Thursday and Sunday, will probably work.
Oh, well, all right, let's plan on it. I work those days, but I can have the stream anytime after about 6 or 6:30 p.m. Pacific time.
That works for me. That works for me totally.
Yeah, right. And if any of you in the chat or within listening distance, you can hear me, you're also invited to join us. I was just thinking that last night. I need to have another rumblings from the lab because it's been a while since they've had one of those
I
streams.
guess it
And
has
the
been
whole
a
point
while.
is, yeah, and the whole point is to have open mic, open topic about all these things that we were talking about tonight and more, hopefully.
Yeah, that's the challenge, isn't it? Though there's so many interesting folks that I really enjoy on here having live streams every week. It's like it's hard to kind of schedule a time when somebody else isn't going to be on. So
I
yeah,
know.
it's kind
Yeah.
of crazy.
Yeah, especially when some of those big you like tonight, we have a really big YouTuber who's on. So it's kind of hard to get people on this stream. So I appreciate all the
Yeah,
more for all you that are here tonight.
I was actually on his channel for a while talking to folks in the chat before I came on here, to be
Well,
quite
that's fine.
honest.
That's
But
fine.
I did want to see his review of The Princess Bride,
Oh, okay. I'm surprised he
which
hasn't done that review already. It's such an old movie.
they just did it tonight, and actually you should check it out and rerun.
No, that's okay. That's all right. I'm not a fan of the movie, but I
Oh,
appreciate
really?
that.
Oh, gosh. It's one of
I
my
saw it at the
favorite
theaters
films.
when it was new, and yeah, I walked out thinking that's one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
Oh,
And I remember it was a disaster at the box office, so it wasn't just me that thought that. But I
Princess
know
Bride.
people
Wow.
just right, just like Spaceballs. I know the younger generations have went back
Oh,
and fell in love with
I
it.
hated Spaceballs.
Well, so did I, but I know younger generations really love those movies.
Well,
They
I'm
look
not
at them
younger.
under. I know, but no, but I'm saying that there's a lot of people who like Spaceballs and Princess Bride because they look at it from through different eyes, which I totally understand and I respect.
The thing is, if you walked on in Princess Bride, I would say just take one more watch and watch the whole
No,
film.
I'm good. I'm got. It's got Billy Crystal, doesn't it?
He's only in like 5 minutes.
I know, but no thanks. There's a few other reasons I just don't remember why. There's another movie like Willow's another one I couldn't stand, but I know a lot of people like it.
Hmm.
But and it's also I'm not into the fantasy thing. That's why I never liked Game of Thrones or the Lord of the Rings. I'm not into fantasy fairies and stuff like that.
Okay.
Princess.
What do you feel about Harryhausen's
Oh,
Sinbad?
Harryhausen. Anything Harryhausen? Yes.
Because those are
That's
fantasy films too,
different.
right? So
Well, the Sinbad movies I liked, but That's a different tone. That's more like a fantasy adventure.
Okay, I guess it depends
I always thought
yeah.
Princess Bride to be a chick flick, I guess, but and
You know,
I wasn't much into chick flicks.
Oh,
that's why Pop I didn't watch it for 20 years because I thought it would be a chick flick, and then when I actually watched it, I thought this is not a chick flick for me. So I guess
Uh,
it's weird.
re-
We have different reactions to the same thing, right?
I believe so. Gorilla's trying to say something. I think I know what it is. Are you trying
Yeah,
to say something,
we
Gorilla?
should probably close this down. I think
yeah.
I'll head out because I don't want to screw this up.
I was
No
just
problem.
yawning. I was just yawning. That's all.
Yeah, I'm looking at the cast now of The Princess Bride, and I can just looking at the cast, I can remember why I didn't like the movie.
I think it was a great cast. I loved Andre
That's
in it.
fine. Yeah, I know it was unusual to get Andre the Giant on there, but I'm not a fan of Wallace Shawn. I'm not a fan of Mandy Patinkin. I'm not a fan of Carrie Elways.
Hmm.
I like Peter Falk. I wasn't a fan of Peter Cook. Carol Kane was okay. Billy Crystal, I despise.
Hmm.
So yeah, there was just too much for me to swallow. I guess you could say. It wasn't my bag.
Well, it's like, hey, we have things we like and things we don't like, so that's cool.
Yeah, yeah, you're
Thing
right.
is, Pop is, I'm one of those people that can totally respect people that don't agree with what I love, and I'm cool with that, right? So,
Yeah, which is totally fine. Herc 130s is a low lemon pie, and Cam Cam, of course. This is a while ago, so Cam Cam thing. I got to go to bed. Have fun, everybody. Have a great night, Cam Cam. If you can
yeah,
still
I
hear
should
this.
probably cook some supper myself and think about sleep. But
Yeah, same here. I need to let my dogs out and cook something.
what was the film you wanted me to send you a
I was
email
double.
about?
It was a Christopher Lee movie.
Oh, Uncle was a vampire.
Yeah, that's it.
I will send that to you shortly.
Thank you. And Herc 130 says I was double streaming because I like both these channels. I had to dual stream.
Oh.
Just didn't let the streams cross. There you go, Herc.
Don't. Well, you know, when I was a kid, my father and I would cross our streams. But that was long before Ghostbusters. So.
PvP, that's a little too much information.
Oh,
Right.
I'm just having fun. That was my Ghostbusters before Ghostbusters reference.
There you go. And Captain Infinity says Spaceballs is better than Return of the Jedi.
Well, I don't know about that, but I didn't like either one of them, to tell you the truth.
Well, that's
Captain,
fine.
those are fighting words right there, even though I have never seen Spaceballs.
I saw Spaceballs, and I don't ever want to see it again.
Gorilla, do you like Star Wars?
Yes.
You
I
might
like
like
the fir-
Spaceballs.
I like the first two films.
Well, I know that's what I'm saying is Gorilla, if for reference, when Star Wars came out, it was so big. Every studio, every director, every writer, every producer was trying to make a copy of Star Wars. And Mel Brooks was no exception. So he jumped on the bandwagon, and it's kind of like a parody of Star Wars. But imagine a parody / comedy of Star Wars with all Jewish jokes. And it's like, nah. By that time, I got so sick of hearing Jewish jokes, and nothing against the Jewish community. But Mel Brooks has to saturate everything he makes with Jewish jokes, and it gets really old. And maybe it's funny if you're Jewish. I don't know. I'm not Jewish. But I got tired of hearing Schwartz on everything that he ever put his name on. I couldn't stomach that name for years.
Instead of Yoda, it was the Schwartz, right?
Everything was because, and he only hired Jewish actors to be in his movies, and it was too much for me.
Yeah, I liked Brooks' early films like Young Frankenstein.
Well, yeah, that's just it, right? The apex of his career was 1974.
Yeah, he
that
was great.
Blazing
I loved
Saddles
his early stuff, but I gotta agree when he did History of the World,
right?
and,
High
later-
Anxiety.
yeah, well, High Anxiety I thought was okay because it was kind of a funny take on silent films.
Well,
I
no,
did
it was a take on.
appreciate
Wait, well, hold on. Silent. High Anxiety was not the silent movie parody.
Oh,
That was the
I'm
Psycho
thinking a silent
parody.
movie, right? No, High
Right.
Anxiety.
Silent movie was a silent movie parody,
Yeah,
and
silent
High
movies-
Anxiety was the Alfred Hitchcock parody.
Right. Yeah, High Anxiety was kind of crap. Yeah, I agree.
Well, that's where he started his decline.
Yeah.
I went back and watched it a couple months ago. The only funny about that movie is Cloris Leachman and Harvey Korman. The rest of
they're
it,
always funny.
that's just it, right? They saved his movies. And when they left, all we had was Mel Brooks, starring Mel Brooks, written by Mel Brooks, produced by
Yeah.
Mel Brooks,
Well,
and
he's
it was horrible and very. I don't think he's a funny actor. He's a funny director and a funny writer, but when he's on screen, for me, it just turns my stomach. I can't
I
do it. The more
agree.
we
What
see
was
him,
it?
the less funny the movie is.
Well, he was in Blazing Saddles, right, for a little
Yeah, a
bit,
small role, and that was the worst part of the
and
movie.
that was the worst. Yeah, I agree. That was the worst part of the film.
It
Yeah,
was, and
totally.
right, which is, and the reason why Young Frankenstein is so good is because him and Gene Wilder had an argument, and Gene Wilder says, "I don't want you in the movie,"
Oh,
and it's like that's the best thing that they could have done.
Gene Wilder was a genius as far as I'm concerned.
Right, I
He,
think he knew without telling Mel Brooks, without telling him, "Look, you're going to ruin it." He said, "I don't want you in the movie. You can direct it, but I don't want you in the movies. No cameo, no nothing."
I'm glad Gene laid the law down. That's good because it made it a
Yeah,
better
because
film.
otherwise, right? Because right now that is stands as my one of my favorite comedies ever, my favorite Mel Brooks movie, my favorite Gene Wilder movie, and all that would be changed if Mel Brooks was even for a cameo. I wouldn't feel the same way because he is not funny. He's like, look at me, look at me, look at me. I can cross my eyes. Look at me. I can say Jewish jokes. Look at me, people. And it's like, oh no, 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 no.
Well, it's like I have this theory, Pop, that a lot of great directors, produce whatever, great people working in film. They have their beginnings, which are interestingly modest. Then they start to rise and they get to their peak. They produce great art for X number of years, how many films those are, and then they go into their decline, right? And you could
Well, that
talk
usually
about
happens.
Lucas, Spielberg, you
Hitchcock,
just name it, right? Hitchcock, even
right?
Kubrick, which I loved. I mean,
Yep.
I'm not a fan of his last
Eyes
film at
Wide
all.
Shut. I think that he was practically losing his mind at that point.
I think that was there were interesting parts in that film, but I thought overall it was kind of crap for
I thought it
me.
was trash. But Captain Infinity, I wanted to respond. Says, I don't know about that. What happened to respecting opinions? I do respect your
I always respect your
opinion, Captain.
opinions.
What I meant was, yeah, Captain. What I meant was, Captain said the Spaceballs is better than Return of the Jedi, and when I said I don't know about that, I just meant that for me, I can't. It's hard to decide which movie I hate the most.
Well, I don't like
That's
either
all I
one of
meant,
them.
Captain. Yeah, me too.
I don't like
Return of
either
the
one.
Jedi. Yeah, Return of the Jedi. If you could, make a fan edit without the Ewok, I think maybe I can like it a little better. Maybe.
You nailed it. You nailed it. You
Right.
nailed it. I hate
Right.
the freaking Ewoks. It was all about marketing teddy
It
bears for
toys,
me.
right? It was
Oh,
toys.
Yeah, it was
dude,
all about
Ewoks
teddy
are
bears.
wonderful. You got these mean-looking little fucking teddy bears running around, taking out the fucking empire. What more can you want?
Did you say mean looking?
Mean little cuddly teddy bears running around, taking out the fucking stormtroopers with a wood log. Come on, what more can you want?
Right, with
Like, what?
logs and rocks, right.
Yeah,
Cuddly is not going to take out Darth Vader. I'm sorry.
well, we had this discussion at work here. The reason that the log works like on the stuff there is that their equipment and all that was meant for energy weapons, not projectile weapons. So therefore, you can get smashed by having a heavy enough object.
Well, if that was the case, then a blaster would destroy any one of those ships.
No,
So
no,
obviously
no.
they had to have a reinforced hull,
The
right?
blaster is an energy weapon, and that's what those things were designed to defend against.
But it's still an explosion. But I don't know. You're talking about the ATXTs, the things on two legs, right?
Yeah, those
Yeah.
are meant to protect them against like blasters and stuff. Versus the wood
Okay.
logs were projectile. See, the blasters were energy weapons. They created like an energy explosion there when they hit them. But
Well, I
wood
understand that, but
logs,
what I'm saying, did they explain that in the movie, or is that just a fan trying to make sense of it?
uh, I can't remember where he said that it got explained. It got explained. I think maybe he's gone real deep into the Star Wars thing. I'd have to actually ask Star Wars expert where they
Because
mentioned that.
it sounds the same when people are saying that Captain Kirk was having a dream for Star Trek Five. I think it's just maybe fans trying to explain away plot holes, but I could be wrong. I don't remember them saying that in the show itself or in the
Hey, hey,
movie. I
hey,
mean,
No. If you watch closely in Star Trek Five, there, you'll see that McCoy slipped something into those beans there, and not to hurt Spock's feelings. There, he just tells him it's whiskey, but really it's a bunch of shrooms, and they're just going on a bad shroom trip. That's what
Oh,
that
okay, gotcha.
was.
Shame on me. I should have known, right?
It's all a bad shroom trip, is what it was.
Oh, Dr. McCoy and his psychedelics.
Yeah,
And Herc
but
130 says
I gotta get to bed
Ewoks.
though.
I know. Let me finish these. Go through these chats real quick. Herc 130 says Ewoks puke, and PvP says I hate Ewoks.
Yeah, it took me
Emotes,
three
Emoks,
times to spell them properly.
Ewoks.
That's where I'm at tonight.
No,
I'm fading.
that's fine. PvP. That's fine. I wanted to thank everybody in the chat who came along and visited. I hope I shouted everybody out that was here. I know we had Captain Finity, Mad Scientist, Gogly, Edge of Time, Herc 130, Admiral Teague. I know was here for a while. I hope a lot of you are still here. Hopefully, you made it through to the end. I know. I'm sorry this went on for so long. I'm working. Actually, I am making a valiant effort to try to trim down the length and the running time of these streams. Cam was also here. Lemon Pie was here. I think that's everybody. Yeah. I hope I didn't miss anybody. And most of all, I want to thank my co-host Gorilla. I'm so happy for having you spend your time with me. Like I said, I know your time is very valuable, and I know it's late for you. And PvP, thank you for coming on the panel and giving us someone to talk to. I really appreciate that. I've
Well,
said it before: is nobody has
always
to be an
fun.
expert to come on our panels. It's just great to have other people on here to talk to.
Always fun. I don't generally join the Gilligan panels because my Gilligan knowledge is very, very sparse. So I figure you
No
and
problem.
Gorilla have far, far more expertise, discussing Gilligan. I just popped on tonight because, hey, I finished my work week earlier and I thought, what the hell? I'll just pop on for a little bit of fun. So,
Well, none of us here are experts, so that's why we bring everyone together. Just like with Nosferatu, we
well,
bring everyone together, and that's how we learn more is by
I
everyone's opinion.
disagree, Pop. I think you're very, very knowledgeable in a lot of pop culture.
Oh well, I thank you. I appreciate it, but
Well,
I
that's
know
why
there's
you're,
definitely people out there who know more than I do. That's for sure, and I do
well,
make mistakes.
there are, as much as we know, there are always people that will know more, but it's like, hey,
Yeah,
you can't let that stop you from discussing things. And by the way, I thought your Nosferatu stream last night was absolutely awesome. I really, really, totally enjoyed it. You had a great panel. You had a
I
lot of
know.
people
Yeah,
that had a lot of knowledge, and I thoroughly, enjoyed it. And I thank you for hosting that.
yeah. The way I look at it is, I was thinking about that after the stream. It was great taking a 1922 movie and bringing it back to life. Because when you go when we actually examine it, you realize how good of a movie it is. It's not. Most people think, oh, it's just some old silent movie, and I don't want. It's probably terrible. I don't want to see it, but it's actually a very good movie. So I'm
Yeah,
glad we covered it. Yeah, it's a good movie, and I'm excited for the remake of it if it comes around to see because if hopefully Robert Eggers will complete that and we'll see it eventually. Supposedly Willem Dafoe's been hired for it, but I don't know
oh
who's going
wow.
to be playing Orlok.
Oh, that could be interesting. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
like yeah, it's really good to talk about some of these, vintage films because unfortunately, a lot of folks just have no knowledge of the past, right? And
well, that's
if
why they come to our channels, right?
yeah, I think if even you get like three, four, five, 10 people that tune into that stream and actually are intrigued enough to go and watch the film, it's like that's a win-win, right?
Exactly. That's what I'm hoping for. Just like with when I show Gilligan's Island here, and when I do Star Trek the animated series, I always encourage everybody to please do not take my opinion or my review at face value. Please watch this for yourself and form your own opinion. That's exactly what I always say. And
Yeah,
I'm hoping to encourage
exactly.
them, right, to encourage them to go back and experience these because they're magnificent.
Yeah, that's the thing. I always, people when they say, "Oh, I don't want to watch black and white films," it's like you have no idea how many great films you're missing.
All right. The first thing I'll say is, well, give me a couple hours and I'll change your opinion. I've got enough where I can get you interested.
Yeah, it's like you're missing like, so many great
A
films.
lot of history. Yes, a lot of history. PB Gorilla, before we close this, why don't you tell us about your channel?
Well, my if I get home soon enough tomorrow, if I can get my damn phone fixed, I'll do random thoughts with Gorilla. Um, Otherwise, on Friday we will have the Waltons review, the Literary Man is our next episode to review. Then
Cool.
we got a watch party at Babylon 5. We just started season 4
All
on
right.
Saturday. Like, who knows? I might do a double stream on Saturday. Then on Sunday we are watching Old Yeller. Then on Wednesdays we are watching Stranger Things. We're almost done with season 4.
Very cool. PvP, tell us about your channel.
Well, I just keep. I don't have any video content yet because I don't have a video camera, so I just keep basically adding to. I'm a big fan of music. I love music. Music has kind of got me through the good times and the bad times, and kept me going in life.
I
So
hear that.
I love music so much, and I just try to add one or two albums every week on my channel, pleasantvalleypicker.ca. And yeah, if you want to type that into the search on YouTube, you probably will find me. And I think the most recent, as I mentioned the other day, was the Oingo Boingo's Dead Man's Party, which is a very well, I think they're an Australian band, and the whole theme of the album is death. It's even got like a Mexican cover of the Day of the Dead on the cover, which is kind of funny.
Uh
And
huh.
basically, it's lyrically, it's got the theme of death running through the album, but yet the songs, a lot of them are very joyful and happy and sort of pop rocky kind of songs, but they're very, very good melodies, very good band. I would highly recommend checking them out because that's my very favorite album by them.
Very cool. And I just dropped a couple links in the chat, everybody. Please check out these channels. We have PvPs and we
Well,
have
thank you.
Gorillas.
Thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you guys for being here. And like I said, especially all of you in the chat, your patience and your understanding for sticking through to the end of the stream. Without the chat, I wouldn't be here. And you're all the reason why I come every week. Please join me again. Like I said, I will be having a random rumblings from the lab stream within the next few days. And then Monday, I should be returning, hopefully, for Star Trek the Animated Series. And then Tuesday evening, we'll do the next horror stream. I'll be putting a poll up in my community tab on YouTube so everyone can vote on what movie we'll be covering next. And then, of course, we'll be back next Wednesday for 2 more episodes for the end of the first season of Gilligan's Island.
Wow. Sounds good.
So, yeah, I'm excited. So, once again, thank you, everybody. And I know it's very cold. Like I said, it's winter. So, if you're out there and the weather is bad, please drive safe, take care of yourself, and peace.